7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we are live. If there was an ever more not necessary term, it's we are live. What would be the option? We're dead. We're recorded. We're last week. We're tomorrow. Who knows? But that's not the way I play. We are live, live, live. It is me, God's comic Brad Stine, and you guys aren't. You are instead the viewers, the watchers, those who are waiting for insight, those who are ready to watch the world get shifted right back into the proper true north that can't happen without me. If you are a first-time watcher, hang on to your seats. And if you're an old watcher, get ready to enjoy another wonderful, amazing, am I optimistic? Oh, yeah, adventure into the podcast realm as I bring you the most unique and fascinating podcast on the air. And it starts right here live on YouTube and Facebook as we speak. I bring you Brad Stine, God's comic, and Brad Stine Has Issues. We're still hanging on. As a matter of fact, I almost hear a song coming. That makes it official. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is me, God's comic Brad Stine, and it is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. My son, Wyatt Stine, is behind the board, pushing buttons, grabbing levers. He even added some steam this time. He's going to try steam machinery because the electronics doesn't work. Son, how are you doing, and why are you doing it with steam?
Well, I'm just going to start off by saying that this is a terrible idea.
Huh?
It turns out electronics and water do not like each other.
Dang it! But what about tea? You could make tea while we're doing the rest of the stuff.
I suppose, but, I mean, do you really want electricity-flavored tea?
I don't care as long as I get to watch you do a little dance and a jig, not me. I'm safe. I'm over here on my wooden desk. I don't even know where this or not, son. Electricity does not conduct well through wood.
Yeah, I know that.
So, I'm safe. You, meanwhile, have metal everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Lots of metal. Aluminum, some steel, copper, gold. Did you know that they actually use gold in circuitry?
I didn't know they used gold in circuitry. I knew they used it in jewelry.
Well, gold is very electrically conductive.
How about that? And it's very expensive. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Why do you think this equipment costs more than we're making a year?
Because we don't get much.
Okay, that's fair enough.
That's right. Listen, I love to have my folks on. We are having some fun, getting ready to start a brand new podcast with a brand new guest. You're going to love this guy. He is somebody you've seen on the internet. If you watch anything to do with apologetics, this guy is somebody you've seen a million times, and you're going to see him more tonight because we got him here live, Wyatt. And Wyatt, you know what I'm thinking about doing this time? It's odd, but I thought, why don't I look and see who's showing up? Why don't we just take a look at the board? Can I call it the board?
You may not. That is my board. You may call it whatever else.
All right,
not the board.
Let's call it the gathering of the elite.
You know what? On second thought, board is fine.
All right, here's the board, and I'm not going to bore you with the board, but I am going to say this: number one is Nick Kress and Carrie Tudor are watching me. I don't know if I would admit that. I'd think they'd be embarrassed by now.
I gotta say, that is the creepiest update they've added. It's just telling you, I'm watching you.
I know, they're not making
because
comments.
Usually you just appeared. But now we have to know that you're out there snooping around.
Yes.
Actually, I think I see Nick outside that window behind you.
Oh, he would be. You know, he deals with air conditioning. He's an HVAC guy. Did you know that, son?
He's in our air conditioning.
Wyatt, Paula Faye Marie Raunchy is here. She's number 2 on my list. And, you know, when it comes to my favorite 4 named ladies, who's my number 1?
Oh.
Yeah, Karen Boyd said, hey, Brad. She didn't go on with the big soliloquy like she normally does, and she didn't even bring you up. So she's angry at you, Wyatt, from last week.
What can I say? Sometimes you press buttons, and sometimes the buttons press you.
Amen. Dusty Wilhelm's here. Plenty Flowers is here. And you know what? How do you not dig that? Plenty Flowers. Come on, why? But here's the thing about if your first name is Plenty. Whatever you add afterwards is going to sound more interesting, more intriguing, have much more to say.
Well, not all the time.
Plenty
bozo.
Oh.
Okay, honestly though, how many people do you think have a last name Bozo? You know what? I'm going to look that up while you entertain the masses.
Well, listen, I'm going to do my best. Ashla Haas is here. Hey, Brad and White. She loves you, as opposed to Karen Boyd, who left you flat. Carrie Tudor. Hey, Brad, White, and all peeps. Hey, she's getting different. Douglas Kroll. It, Doug, I'm here. It, Doug, I'm here. Sounds like Doug had a stroke, Wyatt.
That's unfortunate. I wish there was more that we could do, but unfortunately, we are just. I'm a disembodied voice on a podcast.
You know what? Plenty.
You're you. So
Wyatt, you know what Plenty Flowers said today? Breakfast for dinner tonight.
I've never understood breakfast for dinner because in my mind, breakfast is sweet. It's supposed to be savory, right?
Yeah.
What better way to start your morning? And what better way to ruin the ending of it?
So you don't want anything sweet in the evening?
I mean, how are we going to fall asleep if you're on a sugar rush?
Oh, we're going to be talking about sugar rush here in just a second.
Also, real quick before we begin.
Please. Well, we kind of begun, but
apparently the surname Bozo is the 196,943rd most common last name.
Get out of here.
It is most frequently occurring in Venezuela.
I will be
where it is
darned.
held by 3,181 people.
You're telling me in Venezuela there's 3,181 bozos?
There were 3,181 people who drew the short end of the stick. Yes.
Boy, you got that right. And they're wearing floppy shoes. Wyatt Harris Schunmel said, God bless me, and I can always take that. Alan Moon said, good evening. Never seen Alan Moon. Is he a brand new guy?
I don't know. Alan Mood or Moon?
Moon, son.
You mean that thing in the sky?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I love that thing.
Beth Franklin, hey guys. Chris Felthausen, Hellbred, hello everyone. Jim Brona, he shows up. Good to be with you and everyone. T.W. Smith, Wyatt, how's things going at Lowe's? Hoo-hoo. A little Lowe's reference.
Don't get me started on Lowe's.
Brian Benson, Brad, you're the funniest comedian going today. Wyatt, I can't argue with him. I want to, but how can I? He's right.
Well, you shouldn't argue with him. Just accept your newfound place as greatest comedian today.
You know what, Wyatt?
Now, come tomorrow, it's going to be up for grabs, but at least today you can celebrate.
Nick Kress said he's got fresh peaches came in.
Are you sure you're not the one having the stroke?
If I am, come give me mouth to mouth. Fresh peaches came in, so making peaches Foster tonight. That's with alcohol, Wyatt, something you abhor. Aaron Oakes, back for a second time. Please pray for my family. We were scammed today. And it took us for over 2,000. Gee, many crickets. Sad to be, but we'll prevail with faith in God. Thanks for all you do. God bless you from Wyoming. Aaron, I am sorry you got scammed for $2,000. He makes me feel sad now. I don't even know what to do. How'd you get scammed, Aaron? What happened? Barbara McDuval's here. Plenty Flowers, good evening. I've already seen her. Rebecca Daly Dwyer hello from Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. Guess what? Of course. Unicorn, purple heart. Heart with a shiny thing and 4 prayers. Hello also to Wyatt, and it's raining here. Stan Stinson showing up from Alabama. Marsha Pointer Reed, yep. Clovis Jones, Andy Clovis Jones, watching in Wayne. Good to have you. Let's see. Karen Boyd said, what, Nick? She can't stand it when he has peaches, because Karen has peach envy. She always has.
I mean, peaches aren't even like that good of a fruit compared to like other ones. Are you telling me right now that a peach of any quantity is going to beat an apple or an orange or any of the other heavy hitters in the fruit family?
You know what's odd about peaches?
What?
It's the only fruit I know that needs to shave. Peach fuzz.
Kiwi.
Yeah, that's a good point. Michael Quackenbush.
Yes.
Hello all, happy Monday.
Has returned.
Oh, Angela Winkle, watching from Moline, nice. Illinois. David Pennington, he's here. Let's see. Anybody else I haven't seen? Douglas Coral is here. Dave Sobzik. Hey, Dave, how you doing? He helps me with my flights, Wyatt. He's a flight maker. Jason Cooley.
You mean a pilot?
No. He's a travel agent.
Oh. That makes more sense.
You know who's watching from Charleston, West Virginia? Kayla Robinson. Jason Cooley's here. Jesus Christ is Lord. Of course he is. That's obvious. He's always saying the obvious. Matthew Herbert. Hello, Brad. First time catching you live. What does that say about you, Herbert?
What do you have to say now?
You know what Herbert means in Venezuela?
Bozo?
Yeah. Michael Quackenbush, praying for you and your family, Aaron Oaks. Yeah, no kidding. Alvalind Lundgren, hello from Southern Cal. I don't know if I've ever had Alvalind. That's a beautiful name. Sue Hale, hello from Australia. Australia's in the house. Nice. Have they let you out of the house yet, Australia? Can you go down the street without a mask? How's that no guns working out? Just thought I'd throw a dig into here. She's so far away. What you going to do, beat me up? She can't get here in time. Mike Bennett, Brad, Indianapolis, please. Let's see. Adam Moi, watching from Southwest Washington Strait. Aaron Oaks. Bank fraud. Don't feel sad. It's in God's hands. Fantastic fraud investigation. People are on it. Good. Lois Mobby is in Winnipeg. I've been in Winnipeg, Wyatt. Maybe the coldest place I ever was in my life once.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't that when, like, you almost froze to death?
Yes, I
like
did. 2 minutes.
Minus 70, and you're just like, that's fine. And
I didn't think,
really
because it's so dry, you go out there, you feel like, well, it's not that bad, and next thing you know, your skin starts ripping in half.
You legitimately almost got freeze-dried.
Yes, I know. T.W. Smith said, Wyatt, I understand. I work at a grocery store. Retail life can be strange, to say the least. And then Karen said, I'm on the Georgia border. I can guarantee you I don't have peach envy. Look at her. Always sort of backpedaling, making excuses. Oh, leave me out of it. You know, some people who have peach envy can't fess up to it. And you know what, Karen? Admitting it is the first step to recovery. Bobby Milliganer. Yes. All right. Let's see. You know, Dave said he just threw something. Some countries, Korea, I believe, think a peach and not an apple was the forbidden fruit. So there you have it. So that's just kind of an update on the folks that have jumped on. Now, that's not nearly the amount of people we have. We got 96 people on here, but only a few show up. What do you think the other 96 are doing? Do you think they're watching?
Oh yeah. They line up in the street just with prying eyes.
Oh, that was creepy, and it kind of made me weird.
That was the point. Thank you for ruining the joke.
No, I didn't ruin it. I just
No. You explained the joke. That's the #1 way to kill one.
Good point. Next time when your joke doesn't make sense, I won't explain it so people can sit there dumbfounded and go, what did that mean?
Yeah, then it becomes surreal.
Oh, all right, okay. Just think about that, Wyatt. If you were a knight in England and your last name was Real, you would literally be surreal.
This is factual. We are moving on now.
I would hope so. Listen, what I wanted to say something to you about a little bit of the week, what's going on in the week. I noticed something that happened. I don't know if any of you all saw this, but it's going to be specifically interesting to you because I happen to know that this is your Achilles heel. So, folks, when my son Wyatt was growing up, and you've ceased growing, haven't you, son?
Well, that's what the doctor said.
Okay. So you ceased growing, but while he was growing up, you, as a parent, you're feeling it out. What should your kid eat? What shouldn't they eat? You're trying to be a good parent. You want them to eat fuzzy apples or naked peaches, whatever you're trying to do to make your kids healthy. Well, I, at that time, kind of was I give my kids candy and stuff because I'm the good dad. I'm the good parent. I'm the one that your mom kept you healthy, kept you alive. But when I'm in the grave, they'll say, yeah, but he gave us candy. And I'm going to be given great accolades for that, my son. Am I right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Will that be in your epitaph? Will that be as you get there at the funeral and you talk about your old man, will you say, oh, and he gave us candy?
Actually, I was thinking of it being a sock puppet show.
Oh, please, son. Promise.
I have made this promise to every single friend I have.
They're all getting a sock puppet show
Yes, it will literally be a sock puppet show of their life.
Oh,
their biography, written and directed by me, the guy who knows next to nothing about them.
Well, anyways, I appreciate the sentiment, and I hope you do it because that'd be so funny, it would be a wonderful memory.
It would be the greatest 30-minute, 2-part episode. Broadcast on national TV. And honestly, we should upload it to YouTube. See if we get any views.
I'm in. Look at me. I'm telling you right here on camera that when I die, if you want to do a sock puppet when you're delivering, the eulogy, do it, because it'll be hysterical.
I mean, look. Just because you're dead, don't mean you have to stop working. Okay? We are uploading this to Facebook. We are uploading it to YouTube. We are making bank. Well, we, as in everyone else. But,
well, good for you, my son. I'm glad that you're thinking like a
I'll stay for 20 to the coffin. How's that?
Ha ha! That's my son. See, I want you to live without me. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I want you to. I want you to go on. Matter of fact, I want you to run this podcast. Now, of course, you can't be seen, so we'll just have to have an empty mic and a chair, and you'll just sit there and kind of mumble.
No. Sock puppet show. Sock puppets are the solution to all of life's problems.
No wonder. Now I know why you took out that life insurance policy. You already have some great aspirations for this show when I've passed on.
Yeah, it was kind of weird explaining why I would take a life insurance policy on a sock, but after I got past that red tape, it was smooth sailing.
Okay, well, listen. Here's what I wanted to tell all of my viewers out there, listeners. What should I call them, Wyatt? They're viewers and listeners, yes?
Listeners?
Yeah, listeners and viewers. Listeners.
Thank you for literally repackaging my joke as you all.
How about listen viewers?
I like mine better.
All right. Well, listen, for all you listeners, well, one thing I did, his mom probably didn't, is we got Wyatt Skittles. And we learned something real quick. I didn't pay attention. I'm a guy, so everything gets past me. But my wife noticed that to Wyatt, my little son, he was kind of shy, I guess, or introverted, yeah? You get some Skittles in Wyatt, and it is Christian cocaine. He went nuts. And my wife says it's because of the food coloring that she says is poisonous. But then again, my wife thinks everything's poisonous, but broccoli or something else you can't describe or want to eat. But that's how she rolls. So you would eat those Skittles. What, do you remember that? And something would happen to you, and it was frightening. But you kind of went off the edge. But you got weird, like you were doing LSD. It was like you were seeing, what do you call it? Like hallucination.
Specs the magic dragon, made of Skittles.
Oh, Specs.
Who breathed rainbows instead of fire.
Oh, my goodness.
Don't tell me you didn't know Specs.
I didn't know Specs because that doesn't happen to me when I do Skittles.
You mean you never saw Specs?
I never saw Specs.
Oh,
I will say this.
That adds some
he went nuts, and maybe some of you guys have had the same experience that for kids, Skittles is death. But I saw something on the news this week, Wyatt. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So Skittles came out with some packaging, and I don't know if it's in the U.S. It might be somewhere else. It might be on the U.K. But they came out with some packaging that basically was LGBTQ pride packaging. And you would see it. They had the rainbow, of course, because Lord knows LGBTQ people can just take the rainbow from the rest of humanity that we've had for 6,000 years now. Didn't vote, didn't ask, just took it. Just took it, and it had the rainbow on it and had all the stuff, but it had it said Black Trans Lives Matter. It was like written in small letters in the thing, like it was some kind of like graffiti or something. Anyways, so I saw people on the internet saying, "Hey, we got to give Skittles the Bud Light treatment." That's what they're saying. We're going to give it the Bud Light treatment. And my response to those folks is, it won't work for Skittles. You know why, son? What do you think is my reason why I don't think Bud Light's going to work for every product that goes woke?
Well, typically, a boycott like that works best when there are easy replacements for the product.
Okay, that's true. There is no replacement for Skittles. It simply is the best.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the replacement is a happy, fulfilling life, but, you know.
Okay, but when Bud Light bit the dust, it's now number 14 beer, and I hope it keeps crashing, and I hope, as I said, that it goes bankrupt. If we can bury one company, perhaps we'll see what it looks like when you decide to take a side in the culture wars instead of simply giving your product to whoever wants to buy it, like a good smart capitalist would do, especially in America, where supposedly everybody should have access to the same opportunity, and you can choose to buy it or not, but just don't take a side and then let us choose. But here's the thing about Bud Light you have to understand. When Bud Light went south, the woman that came up with the marketing genius that failed miserably, this woman cost him, I think, $30 billion. Now, how do you go get another job when people say, do you have any references? We're looking for a marketing guru. And she says, well, yeah, I was the brainchild behind the Bud Light campaign. How'd that work out? Well, I mean, we lost $30 billion, and we're now number 14, and we were number 1 solid beer selling, didn't have to sweat it, and I destroyed them. But I had the right heart. My heart was in the right place. I don't know if she's going to get a lot of marketing work, son, but here's the deal. She went on, they found her on this Zoom call saying, you know, the people that buy Bud Light, that made it number 1, were just kind of regular old blue-collar, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, good old boy, hillbilly, non-hillbilly, going to the bar, bikers, sports enthusiasts. It was an easy beer to drink. I couldn't stand it. I don't drink anymore, but I hated light beer, but
like,
don't like
honestly, every single person that I have seen like talking about this has universally said that the product wasn't even that good.
No, it's terrible. It's like McDonald's hamburgers. They've sold more hamburgers than anybody in history, and they suck. They suck.
Well, I mean, like, before this whole boycott
I'm telling you, they just did it out. It was easy and it was cheap. But she said, you know, we got this kind of frat boy image. We really need to find a younger demographic, the new people coming up, and kind of, you know, not have this old school view of who our buyers are. She literally chose to insult the people that made their product number 1, insult them and acted like, we don't want to cater to you, the ones that made us number 1. We don't want you. Keep buying it. We're going to figure you're so stupid. You'll keep buying it. You'll keep buying it. Just like you'll keep going back to the NFL after they crapped all over our flag, like you went back to the NBA after they crapped on our flag. After all these people have done this thing, they knew you'll just go back because you don't want to stand or risk or put yourself in any inconvenience for America. And that's why we're dying. Well, clearly the people said, really? We're in the way, we're deplorables, drinking your beer, making them one. Okay, well, then I'll tell you what will help you out. We'll leave. And they did, in droves. And hopefully they'll drive it into bankruptcy. I'm serious when I say that. I want it to cost everything so people can see, just stick to selling your product. Skittles isn't like that. Skittles just put out a packaging like so many other people did, and Skittles didn't say, all of you kids that are buying Skittles now, we're not interested. They didn't say anything like that. People that buy Skittles aren't paying attention to politics. They don't care. They just like their Skittles. So it's not going to work the same because there is no sort of giant a group that can sort of come together and say, we're done, and we walk away. Because it's such an eclectic group of people that buy this stuff, it's not going to work the same. It's not going to work for the same. Now, when Target hired a actual Satanist to put Satanish stuff in their stores, people could rally behind that. So Bud Lighting isn't going to work for everybody. But I will say this, when your product was number 1 and it tanked, it's now number 14, lost $30 billion. And now we have a idiom, a term we use called Bud Lighting you. You're dead. You have become the punchline. Wyatt, my only question to you, son, is you don't buy Skittles now?
I haven't bought Skittles in years.
You know, why not?
Because
Specs?
on the vending machine.
Specs
No.
would show.
Me and Specs had a nasty breakup.
Is that like
because it
Puff the
turns
Magic
out-
Dragon?
Well, yeah. It turns out he's imaginary, which I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
Which kind of put a wrench in everything. But also at the vending machine at work,
Yeah.
the Skittles are like at the bottom, and hitting the bottom button is like a few milliseconds longer than hitting the pretzel button.
Oh, and you
So
just get
I've
pretzels.
just been getting pretzels.
Pretzel. Well, it's the same. Yeah, I mean, Skittles, pretzels. It's
Which,
very
may
same.
I add, are very good pretzels.
What kind are they? Roll Gold?
The one and only.
Okay.
They're almost like buttered.
Oh.
But they're not.
No, but they
And
taste like butter.
I've
That means it's
gotten-
fake butter, so it's killing you.
I have gotten at least one of our summer vacation cottage kids addicted to them as well. And I do not apologize for it.
Oh, okay. Summer vacation kids. Well, listen, I need to let you guys know that I'm going to be working this Friday night in Knoxville, Tennessee, August 19th. I will be there, and I will be in Knoxville, Tennessee at Knox for Liberty Freedom Fest. Starts at 5 p.m., goes till 10. We're going to have all kinds of guests. We're going to have Brian Ritchie there, who's a Tennessee state rep. Justin, I wrote it, Rafferty, I think. I'm sorry if I mispronounced. Lafferty. I couldn't read my own writing. He's a state rep. Ken Peters, who is a pastor who started Patriot Church. He's going to be a speaker there. Moms for America is going to have a representative there. August 19th, this Friday, Knoxville, Tennessee. If you are watching this, or you know people in the Knoxville area or anywhere thereby, share this, send them out, come on out. Freedom Fest, where we are going to stand up for liberties and freedoms and free speech and First Amendment right and Second Amendment right and Constitution and patriotism and everything else that made America great that's now no longer part of the normal system that we're used to in America. So we're going to try to bring it back, or we'll die trying. That's the way I play. Speaking of which, Wyatt, I decided to do something this week that I've never done on the podcast before. I'm going to create a brand.
You actually got talented?
I didn't think of that. That would have been a.
You know what? That's what we've been missing all this time.
I didn't.
Competency.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's a good. Well, I'll try that next week.
If there is a next week.
Yeah. Do you think they have competency lectures somewhere, or competency lessons, or competency mentoring, or competency tutors?
I don't know, but I think you need a diction class first.
You say competency with a bunch of stuff every time. It's hard. Competency.
Competency. Competency.
You sound like an idiot. Competency.
Completion is
You dug your own grave, son. How's it feel, and how's that
I've
headstone?
dug my own grave, and now we're sharing it.
No kidding. Well, I decided that, as we grow the podcast, and I promised everybody who wanted to join the Mighty 10,000 and be part of the Militia of the Mind, that we want to continue to grow the podcast, make it more interesting, more robust, more proactive in trying to change things, get information, inspire you, great guests, maybe some sketches. We're still growing it little by little. I just need people to join up and sign up to be part of the Militia of the Mind, but I have some good news about that too I want to tell you guys. But I've got a brand new segment that I think I want to try maybe each week. We'll see. Maybe I do it each week. I don't know. But it is something that started my Stine Has Issues years ago when I first was trying to experiment with that, and I was just doing sort of monologues about ideas. And you know what it was? And I look back now and I see it was kind of like PragerU segments. It was sort of this Christian conservative point of view about a particular topic. But I'd try to add some humor to it. So it's kind of like PragerU with some laughs. And I wanted to grow that into more and more things because it's something that can go out virally, drive people to the Militia of the Mind, join us, come to the podcast, this and that. And so I've decided that this week we're going to try another monological segment, hopefully to inspire, hopefully to make you think, but hopefully to entertain as well. And hopefully just help you to want to go out into the marketplace where you have some kind of influence and do some damage while the getting's good. So I'm going to call this segment, this new segment that we're going to add periodically, Brad Stine's Truthache. That's right. I got a truthache, and I'm going to let her fly. So Wyatt, I decided let's give it a go. It's hard to do. You got to do it on a monitor or, a teleprompter because I write it. It's the only thing I write. As you know, everything is extemporaneous. We make it up as we go, if that's not obvious. But this isn't. I wanted to try to get some substance in there. So you've seen some of the old clips. This is brand new, part of the new set. So here you go. This is our first episode, Brad Stine's Truthaches. Tell me what you think afterwards. If you like it, I'll keep doing them. Wyatt, hit it, son. Find the button. Hey, it's God's comic, Brad Stine, and this is your weekly Truthache. Have you ever wondered how you can evaluate if you actually believe something? Is it hard to believe there's a way to do so? On this episode, I'm going to give you the answer to that question. Believe it or not.
And now for the first episode of Brad Stine's Truthache.
We have a lot of people saying a lot of things on the internet and every other means of communication that exists in this day and age. Never before have so many people from so many backgrounds, countries, and heritages been able to talk and discuss and debate and argue, insult and defame and slander and fight and hate and love and inspire and crush in real time as we have today. But what everyone does seem to have in common is we all have a particular belief or point of view that we believe not only needs to be heard, but most important, is correct in its perspective. Of course, that isn't wrong to presume you're right about a subject because you just might be. It'd be amazing if we lived in a world where people were able and willing to not only discuss a particular topic, but were actually there for the hope of enlightenment and clarity in regards to their position. You see, if you're in a discussion about a topic that has two alternate points of view, then there's really only two reasons to be having that discussion in the first place. The first and most common reason people get into discussion is because they not only believe they are right, but find it imperative that the person they are speaking to also agree with their perspective. Rarely would you ever find someone getting into a dialogue with the hope that at the conclusion of the debate they'll have discovered that the idea which was important to them was actually incorrect all along. How many of us get into an argument hoping to find out we were on the wrong side of reality? Consequently, unless you're one of these people that engage in debate simply for the joy of an intellectual exercise, you're engaging in this discussion for the purpose of convincing your opponent to alter their worldview to conform to yours. You're trying to convince someone that what they believe to be true isn't. The other reason, and far less common, is that you enter a debate in the hopes that your opponent can actually prove you wrong and help you alter your perspective in the hope of living a more well-rounded and honest, or as Plato said, an examined life. But here's the concept I want to present to you today, because I'm not convinced your average person has taken the time to contemplate it. Thus, my question to you is this: how do you actually know what you believe? First off, we need to establish that just because you believe something is true doesn't mean it is. Nevertheless, many people believe many things that simply are not true. But there are some extremely important beliefs that people have that have existential ramifications. Some beliefs can hinder your growth as a human, for example. If you don't like your station in life, but put the blame on other people or circumstances for getting you there, then whether that belief was actually true is irrelevant. What is relevant is you believed it was true. Thus, you acted on it, and it actually caused you to reap exactly what you had sown. If you believe that, your lot in life is foreordained, and there's nothing you can do to alter it, then you will get exactly what you believe. That's how God made the world to work. There are two main ways you can tell what you actually believe about anything. The first is, does it affect your behavior? For example, when this corona control concept hit the earth, there were two trains of thought. One was that since 99% of people affected by it would recover, we shouldn't shut down our livelihoods, and we shouldn't have to wear masks except among the most vulnerable, so as to be able to acquire herd immunity, but also to maintain personal freedom and liberty over a government they believed had overreached their authority and engaged in soft tyranny. Thus, these people didn't wear masks, as their belief affected their behavior. Those that had complete trust in the government's experts and believe that those who have died from it proves that this is very dangerous and the least you can do is wear a mask if it has the chance of protecting a vulnerable person. It's the least we can do to inconvenience ourselves for helping the less fortunate while trying to get back to work. These people wore their masks religiously, literally, and often looked down upon those that didn't follow suit. Once again, you know they truly believe their perspective because it affected their behavior. But there's a second way to really tell if you believe something, but it carries much more weight and it's much more precarious. I'd say, though, that it's probably the single greatest proof of how committed you are to a particular belief. And it is this: you really know you truly, truly believe something if you are willing and ready to die for it. We don't have to go any further than the Founding Fathers, who, in signing the Declaration of Independence, literally stated that they had pledged their life, liberty, and sacred honor. Some, of course, actually paid such a price. Human history is replete with people that have fought for their country's right to remain sovereign and free from outside forces that would invade their land and seek to enslave them. No one usually questions the reality that people are willing to die to defend their family and friends and way of life. We find it noble and enjoy reading of such a scenario or watch it in a film that always inspires us. We love to watch others sacrifice themselves for their causes. But here's the bigger question. What if the freedom and peace you have enjoyed and taken for granted suddenly is in peril? And those who have died in the past for you to enjoy the fruit of their sacrifice are calling out from the grave and saying, hey, it's your turn. What if the next sacrifice required is yours? Some people wonder why I often reference the Bible in many of these episodes, and the reason is crystal clear to me. I behave exactly as I should because I actually believe the Bible is the Word of God. If I believe that is true, then I'm obligated to behave as such, because not only do I owe God my allegiance, but I owe others the opportunity to be told the ultimate truth in the hope they too will sacrifice their pride and submit to God's call on their life. Whether others believe the Bible's actually the Word of God, it's irrelevant. If I do, I have to behave as such. I also must be willing to accept the insults, slander, hate, and malice that comes with delivering truth to those who despise it. And if America continues on its trajectory of replacing God's truth for the cancerous religious counterfeit of political correctness, EID and CRT, and the other cultural Marxisms from which it derives, then in the near future I will have to be willing to be imprisoned for my faith, and potentially be killed for it. This isn't hyperbole, as all one has to do is see what's happening to Christians around the world. We are now the single most persecuted religious group in the world. Because I've been called as a missionary to America, it's essential that I reveal what has been so obvious to me in the last few years of ministry. America is filled with way too many churchgoers, not nearly enough Christians. If you claim to be one, then simply test yourself. Do you constantly tell others about the hope that lives within you, or do you keep it to yourself for fear of reprisal and attacks? Do you compromise what God has decreed for thousands of years as to how humans are supposed to live in regards to marriage or sexual behavior or loving your enemy, protecting the widow and the orphan? Or do you let the latest fad and cultural icon tell you how you must succumb to the new normal? In other words, do you live your life to try to redeem culture through Christ, or do you let culture dictate your behavior? Because remember, you know what you honestly believe by whether it affects your behavior or not. Whichever worldview is your impetus for how you act is telling you who you actually are. The Bible says a true believer is crucified with Christ and thus is given his will, authority, and autonomy, and yes, his life to the living God. So I ask you, are you ready and willing to die for Christ? Some of you will walk away from this as it's too much to ask, but the handful that are committed to this self-sacrifice, come join us. We have work to do. If you are seeing what's happening in the United States and you want to join those of us who are deciding to fight back, join the militia of the mind. Get in and be one of the first 10,000. That's what I'm looking for. 10,000 people who identify as Americans and are willing to pay whatever price to keep freedom. This is God's comic, Brad Stine, and this has been another Truthache. Hope it helps.
And this is another Truthache.
So, that was my son doing his drama voice. Why, can you do it again so we can all hear it?
Yes, this is the voice I use when I need a bit more articulation.
Do it. Do what you just said. Do the Truthache thing.
And this has been another Truthache.
It's kind of sexy, Wyatt. Are you going for sexy?
Thank you. That was absolutely not what I was going for.
What were you going for? Bozo?
Basically anything but that.
Okay. You failed.
I was thinking more like, by a fireplace in a comfy chair with like a robe and a pipe.
Oh, that's
trying to be fancy.
Yes.
Because truth is fancy, I guess. I don't know.
So you're like a guy in a robe and his slippers, and it's a fireplace and his pipe, and maybe an ascot, and then you want to be sexy.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Of course. Well, listen, I don't know. The people, if you like these things that I do, because these are the kind of things that we can put out into the internet, socialize. You guys share it, and I need you to do this too. So, if you're new to the live version of Brad Stine Has Issues, you can get us on Spotify. You can get it on YouTube, and for all of those who do watch on YouTube, I don't got a lot. I apologize that we don't comment, but we can't get on two at the same time, otherwise I would. But I'm grateful that you're there. Though Lee Allen Baker Kaufman, YouTube scrapped hers, didn't they?
Did they?
I thought so. I thought somebody went to get on her and they couldn't because, of course, she talks about the vaccine injuries and so forth. So.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I don't think that's on YouTube.
Yeah, can you imagine? Anyways.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I know. And so that's where we're at in America. But the cool thing is, if you want to fight for America, like I said, and that's what this really was all about, the idea that, there really is something at stake. People will tell me, hey, man, they're pushing us to a civil war. Well, let me make this very clear to you. We're in a civil war. It's already here. We're just not using guns. So that's kind of what's happening. When you have a group of citizens of this country who are fighting against Americans, those who care about the country as was, who care about keeping the Constitution as is, those who care about the constitutionality and the original intent of the Founding Fathers, those who care about having a border secure so that you can watch who comes in and out to make sure that you're not getting fentanyl in here or sex traffickers, all the things that are literally happening on the watch of this particular administration. Those who want to fight against that and say, that's not what we're looking for, that's not who we want. We want to be a disciplined people. Yeah, we're going to have to say no to you in some of your behaviors. That's just really what it's going to be, because we need to be civil, we need to be virtuous, we need to be moral. And that's what the founder said. If we're not moral, we won't survive, because we're a government unto ourselves. That's what a republic is. So here we sit. I'm going to fight as I can by gathering different people who will be on the back page of bradstine.com, and that's where you need to go if you want to become part of the Militia of the Mind. If you want to join this group of Americans who identify as Americans. I'm an American. I'm not ashamed of it, not going to apologize for it, and I am going to fight against those lies of history that want to rewrite history, to want to lies that say we are systemically racist, when in fact we're simply systemically narcissistic, those who want to say that this country was built on slavery as opposed to it had slavery like every other country, and it also ended it long before they did anywhere else, including Africa, which of course still has slaves as we speak. So until people actually care about slavery around the world and the sex slavery happening right now, I know that they're full of crap, and it's a power grab for them to destroy my nation. Well, they're not going to destroy my nation, at least without me fighting back. They might beat me, they might kill me, they might end me, they might destroy me. But folks, that's really what is asked of those who want freedom. And we've never saw freedom as being so tenuous before. We didn't know that it would vanish. We thought we have the Constitution, we have people who are somewhat sane, we don't agree with each other, but we do want America to survive. Well, that's off. The left wants America to die. They want to be part of the World Economic Forum. They want to be part of a global citizenry. They want America to have less. They want to give away what we have, and they want to destroy everything they've done. That's happening with citizens next to you. And notice I call them citizens, not Americans. They've abandoned that when they decided to hate this nation and stay here. So they're not Americans. They're citizens. Americans are those who say, I'm identifying it and I'll fight against pornography, pedophiles, trying to teach something to children. Sexuality doesn't belong. Clearly, it's absurd, and this is the type of thing that must be fought in groups of people in militias. And we're going to use the mind. We're going to hopefully not have to use guns, but in fact use our minds, our prayers, our numbers, our voting, so forth. I'm going to have people in the back of the Militia of the Mind that you can look at and you can learn from, or you can get help from if you need to. Matter of fact, we're going to have a guest on in a couple weeks who's with a law firm that takes on religious liberties pro bono. If you've been fired or anything, you can call them, and if it's a good case, they will for free fight and sue and get you your job back and get you your money compensation. This is a real deal. We're fighting for real. That's what I want my podcast to be. So we are looking for 10,000 people, the first 10,000 to identify as Americans, and are going to go into the workplace, into the neighborhood, and just simply stand for what they believe is true about America and stand strong. And we'll help you, we'll assist you, but sometimes you'll be alone, and sometimes you'll get shot, and sometimes you'll get beaten up, and sometimes you'll be spit upon, and sometimes you'll be maligned, and they'll try to cancel you, and we'll try to fight with you, and we'll pray and see what happens. But this is the real Civil War. It's really here, and you better get in or get a shelter, because we're in the war, so might as well shoot back. So join the mighty 10,000. Be part of the first 10,000 people that give $3 a month. Yes, you got to pay something, so we can build this thing into something by having production, paying different people that can come in and help us do this. I mean, we're literally building our own infrastructure, and it's all through donations of people who want to put some skin in the game and fight back. So go to bradstine.com. You just fill out your name, email, $3, so they'll ask for $36. But here's the one little thing I wanted to give you before we go to our guest. The problem we were having with the shirts was I came up with we got a logo, Militia of the Mind logo, and but I wanted to have the mighty 10,000 have something special, because I hope that 100,000 people join. I hope 1 million people join eventually. But the mighty 10 will be always just that. You get that acknowledgement that you jumped in while the getting was difficult, while not everybody was doing it. You get a special place in this army of those who want to fight for freedoms and religious liberties and free speech. So I wanted to have on the shoulder maybe a patch or something that said M10K, Mighty 10,000, and then underneath would have your number, 0001, 0005, 0037, 0100, and eventually 1,695. That's your number of where you placed when you joined, okay? But the problem is when you try to make these shirts, you try to put something individually on the shirt, you can't do it. It's too expensive, because you have to have each one of them individually sewn, and we can't do it. It's just not going to work. It's too expensive, and I can't. So I thought, what am I going to do? I want to give these guys something special. The Mighty 10 deserve this special thing. And so we have the shirts. What do we do here? And then it came to me. My wife said it, and it made sense. I know how to do it now. I am going to personally get a marker, a great bright paint on cloth marker, and I'm going to personally write MK100007, and then I'm going to sign it personally. You'll get your own shirt, but it will be personally autographed, signed, and your number will be on that sleeve that I wrote as opposed to putting it there. So that's how personal it will be. If you get 10 people to join, then you will get something special as well. Now, the shirts will have to be bought unless you pay a higher premium, only because they're expensive. And so that's part of the deal. You're investing. We're not talking about $10 a month. We're not talking about $50 a month. We're talking about $3 a month, and you buy a shirt for whatever it's going to be, $25, $30. And so that's where we're at. And so little by little, and I just get excited when I say this, because you guys watch me, many of you have been here from the beginning when I was sitting on my laptop in my den. So here we are, and it's growing. It's becoming, I even got a sign. It's just crazy what's happened. I'm grateful to God. But I'm grateful really with the people that he's allowed me to speak to, because I love talking to interesting people. And I do want you to know that somebody complained about Doug Giles because he said balls to the wall. This is not a good Christian conversation. And I wrote in the thread and said, no, I believe in free speech. I will never censor my guests. I mean, if they were just cussing, effing this and effing that for no reason, maybe we beep that out. But if they talk differently than me, I'm going to let them. I believe in free speech. That means you got to deal with it. If you believe in free speech, you got to listen to speech you don't like or hate. That's what freedom is. You got to learn to suck it up. You got to learn to judge context over content. You got to learn to be sophisticated. You got to learn to say that freedom and free speech is more important than your little insecurities over here in a word, folks. We have to see what's at stake, and that means you're going to have to suck it up and quit being a legalist. That ain't going to fly. It's not going to work if we want this to be a robust podcast people actually listen to. So, that being said, we have a special guest this week. If you know anything about apologetics, apologetics simply is a means of apology. It's apologia. It's Greek. It means a defense of. So if you ever listen to people on the internet that defend our faith, there's only a handful that are there all the time. John Lennox, William Lane Craig, who's somebody I want to get on as a guest, I hope, and some other folks. But there's one guy that's on all the time, and he's great, and he's a friend of mine. And so I got him to do it. He doesn't have a lot of time. The guy's very busy. And he came on and said, I will be happy to interview. His name is Frank Turek, and his ministry is called The Cross-Examined. He goes into colleges and talks about the proofs of God and then takes questions. I'm sure you've seen him. He gets hundreds and thousands of views. We're going to share this. We're going to get on Instagram, and he will collaborate with me, and I'll get this program into his fan base and his viewers, and we'll get his onto ours. We're going to grow this, folks. We're going to get a mighty 10,000. You're going to be part of it. But you're going to love this interview. If you've ever wanted to know more about our faith, what does it look like? How do you defend it? Is it true? Maybe it's not true. Maybe you're a skeptic watching right now. Maybe you're an atheist. I hope so. Well, this will be an interesting conversation. By the way, I want to have atheists on too. I want to have people that I disagree with and see if we can find some common ground. But if nothing else, let's challenge each other. That's what it's supposed to be, to have a real conversation. Not to get canceled, not to get offended. Be a grown-up with your big boy pants and have a conversation, especially ones that are hard to hear. So, enjoy this fun, interesting interview with our guest tonight, God's Comic Brad Stine and Frank Turek. Enjoy, guys. So, once again, God's Comic Brad Stine brings you the best of all the greatest, most eclectic people I can find. I have people on that don't agree with me. I have people on that do. But the biggest key is I want people that are interesting, provocative, intelligent, sophisticated, know what they're talking about, and are at the top of their game in their particular genre. And if I can't find that, I call Frank Turek. So that's really what I got going. Frank is actually an old friend and a wonderful apologist, man of God, seeks God Almighty, believes Jesus is God, and is willing to fight in the cultural battle that is maybe unprecedented, at least in the United States, as far as this country's existed. So that's what we're going to discuss, and you guys are fortunate that I was able to come up with the money to bring him in, because he's very, very expensive. And he doesn't say that because he's humble, but he's incredibly expensive. But nevertheless, he's here with us. I'm sure you've seen him on Cross-Examined. If you haven't, subscribe and watch his channel, because it's amazing. But in the meantime, I'm privileged and with my pleasure bring on my old friend and fellow brother in Christ, Frank Turek.
Hey, Brad,
how are you, my brother?
Book. I've got a new book you haven't mentioned yet. It's called 10 Steps to Humility and How I Made It in 7.
Oh, I've heard about that, but in your press release.
Yeah, which is very humble of me, because I actually made it in 6.
Oh, seriously? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what I've always appreciated. You've always been one of the most humble guys I've ever met, and you would tell me that regularly, and that's where I learned. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So it's a pleasure to be with you. You and I have talked and have been at venues and events over the years together, and maybe I think I may have been on maybe one of your I don't remember.
You've been on the podcast. Yeah. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist podcast.
That's right.
Called God's Comic. That was you.
Well, again, I don't like to bring those things up, because I let the modest guy like you bring up and tell people how great I am. But listen, I want to get right to it, because you are so filled with information, and it's so important what you're doing right now in America. It's been your ministry. You are a professional apologist.
I'm sorry.
And yes, and I think that if there was anything ranked in the top 10 worst moniker that a person could have, it's how did they come up with the term apologist? It's like, I believe Jesus is God. I'm not ashamed, and now let me apologize for a minute as we get into it. So let's just start quickly. I'm not going to belabor stuff. You have had a million interviews and done this for years, so I don't want to go with stuff you've done. But for those who may be new to the faith or just new to this whole concept, quickly, what is an apologist? What makes that unique and different than a pastor or a teacher?
Yeah, it comes from 1 Peter 3:15, which says, always be ready to give an answer, give a reason for the hope that you have. And there's a word in there in Greek, apologia. It means to defend. It doesn't mean you're saying you're sorry. It means you're giving evidence for what you believe. So you may have heard this term used in the political realm when they You know, they used to say, well, so-and-so is an apologist for President Biden or an apologist for Donald Trump. That means that they're trying to defend those people, give evidence as to why they're good or they're not bad or whatever. Well, a Christian apologist is someone that gives evidence that Christianity is true, that God exists and Jesus rose from the dead are the two main things.
So is that a new, more of a modern term? Like, would that have been in the past considered a teacher or a academic? I don't. Was there another term?
No, it goes all the way back to, as I say, when Peter wrote First Peter. It goes all the way back to that, and there were people like Justin Martyr, who would be considered an apologist, or Irenaeus, you know, first, second century people. So because there were people out there like Celsus who were saying Christianity's wrong and stupid, and there were people coming back at him saying, no, it's right and true. Here's the evidence, it's true. So this goes all the way back to the beginning. It's kind of new in our country. When I say new, the past 50 years, Brad, because, you know, we were generally a Christian culture by description, not prescription. You didn't have to be a Christian, obviously, to be to be an American, but most people were, and we didn't feel like we needed to defend it. We didn't need to give evidence. You could just open the Bible and say, here it is, and they go, oh, the Bible, what does it say? Yeah. You know, the old Billy Graham crusades. Now you open the Bible, they call you a bigot and a homophobe. You know, you're wrong, you're crazy, why you believe this stuff, so now you got to give evidence.
Well, and you do it quite well. Now, I noticed that you are, at least the clips I've seen, you usually are on a college campus. Is that your main thrust, is going into college campuses?
That's why we started Cross-Examine, to go to colleges, high schools, and also we'd go to churches. But we love the college campus. We try and do about 20 of them a year. And after I give a presentation as to why Christianity is true based on our book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, we then have a microphone up for Q&A, and that's where you're seeing most of those short Q&A videos from our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and it seems like people are engaged. It seems like the kids come out. I'm guessing there are more than just Christians showing up. It seems like you do get a lot of antagonism out there, and which is fine, because that means it's going to make for an interesting conversation. But more importantly, perhaps there seems to be something they feel compelled to bring to the table. I mean, if you thought Christianity was just foolishness, if somebody was on campus saying, we're going to have a lecture on Bigfoot or the flat earth, you're probably not even going to go. It's like, why am I? That's stupid. I don't even know why I would waste time. But they feel compelled to come to a Christian event and engage you, usually with a lot of anger, oftentimes with a lot of arrogance. That seems to be the two paramount foundational characteristics I've noticed, at least in New Atheism, is arrogance and anger. There's something else psychologically happening here that is more than just, gee, let's have a little debate and see if we can find some place. So what is your gut as to what will bring the antagonists out to fence with you?
Well, I think it's usually a moral issue, Brad. When I had those debates with Christopher Hitchens way back in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009, you could just sense how angry Hitchens was with God. So I kind of ended the debate by saying, Christopher Hitchens says there is no God and I hate him, right? It's kind of a hatred, and I think largely it's moral, because if you read Hitchens' book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, he's really mad at God for the sexual immorality rules that the Bible has. You know, why does God care about who we sleep with, right? That's what he really appears to be mad about, or one thing he appears to be mad about. Now, some of the things he appears to be mad about, he's legitimately mad about, because Christians have done some stupid and evil things, right? Yeah. But that doesn't mean Christianity's false.
Right.
In fact, it shows that it's true that we're fallen and we need a savior.
Right.
I mean, I love what John Dixon says about this. In fact, I think he's at Wheaton now. He was from down under, and he wrote a book called Bullies and Saints. And he asked this question, Brad, check this out. This is a great question to ask people who think there are too many hypocrites in the church, right? Which there are. But he says this: when somebody plays Beethoven poorly, who do you blame? Right? You don't blame Beethoven, right? You blame the player. So when somebody plays Jesus poorly, you don't blame Jesus.
Yeah.
You blame the person playing Jesus. And if all of us were perfect, we wouldn't even need Jesus.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're fallen. Yeah, we're hypocrites. In fact, in the second debate I had with Hitchens, I said, yeah, Christopher, I'm a hypocrite. I can't live up to what Jesus said and did and told me what to do. But if I could, I wouldn't need him. And when people say I can't go to church because there's too many hypocrites down there, I always say, come on down, pal. We got room for one more.
You're right.
We're all hypocrites. The church is a hospital for sinners. It's not a country club for saints. We're fallen. That'd be like saying I can't go to the gym because there's too many fat people down there.
Right.
Well, that's
Right.
why they're there, right? They're trying to get in shape.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And, it's kind of like what I have said similarly is that, what I love about, listen, here's the deal. Life isn't complicated. It really isn't. It's hard, and it's got a lot of darkness and evil and crap going on, but it's not complicated. It really boils down to one idea. Do you believe in God or you not? Because that's going to color the rest of your life. How you vote, how you think, how you behave, what is true, what is not true. It's all based on one simple idea. I believe in God or I don't. And that will be your destiny. And what I love about Christianity, and it's part of what the uniqueness of faith is, I don't see faith as sort of a jettisoning of your intellect, which I know you don't either, but we've been caricatured that way.
That's right.
That's not the way it is at all. I believe that faith is a sixth sense. It's another way to see that is equally coherent as our five senses in our three-dimensional world. It's another way to see that we engage in regularly when we deal with transcendent ideas, love, courage, hope. These are not material substances. No. You cannot. What's the atomic weight of love? There is none. What is where? Show me courage in a microscope. The reason that the atheist fails is they try to put God into a materialistic context that he doesn't fit. But they can't accept something outside of the material world. And once you've basically set a boundary for yourself, if there's some information that could lead you to deeper truth, you have no access, not because it's not there. You've cut yourself off from even exploring it. So let's talk about atheists, since this is kind of where we started. I believe, and you would know this much better than me because you do this and have done it for so many years, one-on-one with these folks. I believe the number one reason for atheism is pain. I think they experienced something somewhere where God didn't show up where they needed to. Please, God, my mother has cancer, fix her. And she dies. And he says, well, then screw you. Please let my parents come back together. Please don't let, my brother die. And he does. And the pain becomes their justification for becoming God. Okay, screw it. If this is what this is, I'm out. And so I think because anger seems to be pain internalized, I think when they come out in pain and arrogance, it's almost like they're begging you subconsciously to prove God exists because they miss him. Now, maybe I'm way overthinking this, but... No,
I mean, if you're mad at somebody, you got to believe he exists, right?
Right.
I mean, why would you be mad at somebody that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. And it's interesting you brought up materialism because, Hitchens was a materialist. And in our second debate, one student from the crowd asked him this question, Christopher, what is love? And Hitchens hemmed and hawed for a while until he finally said, love is a chemical. And I said, don't say that to your wife. I mean, honey, do you love me? Yeah. Why? Because I got the chemical today. Tomorrow I might not have it.
Right.
That makes absolutely no sense at all. But I think you're onto something, that pain is one of the reasons that they think God is evil. Now, Hitchens had a real difficult upbringing. His mother committed suicide. I don't know if his father was involved very much. But it's interesting, both his brother, Peter, and himself burned their Bibles when they were like teenagers, and yet Peter came back to faith and is a Christian now. And he wrote a book. I'm trying to think of the name of the Peter Hitchens book, but it was basically about his brother. It was about the anger that Christopher had. I'll look it up as we're talking here, but it really goes to your point that anger is often behind atheism. And why would you fight so much against a being you didn't think existed to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? Here it is. It's called The Rage Against God, How Atheism Led Me to Faith.
Yeah.
That's Peter Hitchens.
I read that, yeah.
Christopher's brother.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There is a rage. And one of the things that this assumes, a rage, as you know, Brad, is a standard. That God has somehow not lived up to my expectations, my standards, so he must not exist, or if he is, he's evil. Well, what standard are they using to say that's evil? See, there is no objective good or bad, right or wrong. There's no evil unless good exists, and good doesn't exist unless God exists. So what they're doing is they're stealing from God while they're arguing against him, which is the subject of one of my books, Brad. There it is.
That's fascinating. What are the odds? What are the odds that you happen to write a book just recently to anticipate prophetically what this conversation was going to lead?
I wrote it because I knew I was going to be on God's Comic Podcast, Brad.
Well, God bless you. I mean, I'm just glad to have facilitated your God's sovereignty in your life. And you're and I guess that makes you a micro Calvinist.
You were
apparently this was
to say
destiny.
that right now. That's right.
But let's stay on that trajectory, because I think that is an important concept to navigate. One of the things I've noticed, and again, my work as a I don't even know what I am, but I'm a prophet to the church. I know God called me to that, which is absurd and mind-boggling to me, but it is what it is. He's stuck with what he has to use. So I got into that. But I've always loved apologetics, theology, philosophy. It just interests me, but it doesn't interest most people. And so what God has done with my life and my ministry is he made it very clear. He said, Brad, your gift is communication. You laymanize big ideas and put them into a context that people can grasp. And your comedy is just the flavor. That's just the flavor. It's the delivery system, but that's not what you're good at. You're good at getting an idea across, and you're really good at that. You're really and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but when I look at a John Lennox, when I look at a William Lane Craig, when I look at Nancy Pearcey, when I look at Francis Schaeffer, folks, Stephen Meyer, you are in that category, but you're much more blue collar. I mean, you have a much more.
That's what I want to be. I want to be like you. I want to laymanize stuff, because if I can't express it in the language of everyday people, then I don't understand it. So
yeah.
I've got to understand it in that way in order for me to communicate it. And by the way, those people you just mentioned, I stand on the shoulders of every one of them. William Lane Craig, Stephen Meyer, Nancy Pearcey, John Lennox. Those guys are the scholars. Those guys and gals are the scholars. They have the PhDs. I have a D-Min, not the same thing, but they're PhDs, and they do original research. I just take what they've done and I go, okay, how can I understand this and explain it to the average person? That's what I'm trying to do.
But you do, and you do it, and you do it brilliantly. And that's all I'm saying is, I see you and I as kind of in that style. It's just a little bit rough around the edges, but not because we don't know what we're talking about. It's just we're making it easy to grasp. But I think that because I've studied this, because it does intrigue me and fascinates me the way people think, and it's probably why I'm a comic, because the whole point of comedy is to observe human nature and to try to draw conclusions. Why do we do that? Why we don't let anything pass us by flippantly. I always would use the analogy, if you went and met a guy and you shook his hand, hey, good to meet you, and that would be that. A comic would shake his hand and go, why don't we shake hands? I mean, everything is an intrigue to us. Everything is a question. We try to break everything down. So one of the things that I discovered when I listened to guys on a podcast or in debates and so forth, is that atheists are often, they're very smart. Not the internet atheists. They're idiots. I mean, they're really uneducated. They have, they don't know what they're doing when their entire argument is cutting and pasting somebody else's argument onto your thread. So if you can't think this through yourself, brother, get out of the game, because at least have the intellectual acumen to face me with your own perspective. Right. But if you can't do that, you shouldn't even be doing it. But the thing that I've discovered interesting about the good the ones that kind of are in the game, like a Hitchin, who clearly was a really smart guy, clearly a smart guy, but he wasn't wise. And wisdom is the problem. Wisdom is where you find God, and the Bible even says, fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. If you don't believe in God, you simply can't be wise. You can't even evaluate the information that you assess with any depth or integrity, because you don't have access to the teleology of it. You don't understand why it's there. You don't even think it's there for a reason. And this is what I want to ask you. How do these guys, like a Hitchens, for example, I'll just use him because he was so good at it and is no longer with us, but he's one of the go-to guys that atheists like to use because he was good at zinging you and smart and smarmy and smart ass, and he was that's what he was like. And so but it seems like there's elements of the foundational philosophy of exploring the ideas of purpose, of teleology, that they can't grasp. They can't grasp. And so I want to go back to kind of what you said about foundations. Every time they say you shouldn't do this, or you Christians are judging, or whatever, they're making a moral claim.
Of course they are.
They're making a claim that there's a moral perspective that we're supposed to be aware of and
we're
be
obligated to obey.
Yes.
We have moral obligations, and in their worldview, there's no such thing as a moral obligation.
There is no moral obligation whatsoever. It's all subjective. It has to be. And yet, if you were to bring up this idea of, well, how do you justify your moral obligation? It's always the same stinking answer, from the internet atheist, hobbyist, to a Hitchens or a Dawkins. I don't need to justify it. It's good for humanity. It helps.
As soon as they say that, you got to ask, what do you mean by good?
Of
and
course,
why humans?
Well, of course, they
which humans?
They can't break anything down. They can't. They constantly use words like the elegance of evolution. It's like elegance implies that there's some artistic acumen here that obviously a non-thinking entity doesn't put into place. Only you assess that. You only have access to that. You only can make those declarations. You are set apart from this thing, and you can't see it. And so what is the easy answer is their minds are clouded. It's sort of the evil one is trying to keep them from having access to the depth. But it seems almost like a self nullification of their ability to reason when it comes to clearly the idea that you cannot. Why do you even have a debate if everything you're saying is determined?
Right, exactly.
There's nothing to talk about. We're just here because I have no option. How do they wrangle with that?
Well, they don't. And that's why I asked Michael Shermer in one of my debates, why should I trust a thing you say, Michael, if you're just a molecular machine, if you're just a moist robot? And all he did was he tried to make a joke. Oh, electric me. He wouldn't engage, and neither would Hitchens. They don't engage on these issues. When I did engage a reasonable atheist by the name of Jeffrey Lauder, he just denied being a materialist at the end of the debate. Well, then my next question will be, well, how does immaterial reality exist if there is no God? Where does that all come from? Where do the laws of mathematics, the laws of logic, the moral laws, our mental world, where does all that come from?
Right.
The metaphysical world. Right. It seems it's grounded in a mind. If it's grounded in a mind, the great mind would be God's mind. Now, we don't know it's the Christian God just by looking at nature around us, but it could be the Christian God. We have to see if Jesus rose from the dead to see if the God that created this space-time continuum is the God of Christianity. So they don't engage, Brad. You're right. They avoid it. And C.S. Lewis said something so profound on this issue. I'm paraphrasing, but basically he said this. Well, actually, instead of paraphrasing it, let me say it just the way he said it, because he was so good at just everything he did and everything he said.
Was this in the Miracles book?
No, you know what? This was literally a broadcast talk that he gave when he was on the BBC during World War II. That, as you may know, turned into Mere Christianity, but it didn't come over word for word. And this, he said on a broadcast talk, listen to this statement because it nails it perfectly. He says, suppose there were no intelligence behind the universe. In that case, nobody designed my brain for the purpose of thinking. Thought is merely the byproduct of some atoms within my skull. But if so, how can I trust my own thinking to be true? But if I can't trust my own thinking, of course, I can't trust the arguments leading to atheism, and therefore have no reason to be an atheist or anything else. Unless I believe in God, I can't believe in thought, so I can never use thought to disbelieve in God.
Right.
Boom. Now, when I say that on a college campus or even in a church, there's usually an audible gasp from the audience because they get it. They go, oh, he's right. If there's no intelligence behind the universe, I shouldn't even believe in anything I think. How can I even think this stuff?
Right.
Unless there's a mind behind the universe.
Yes. Well, of course. So one of the things, you know what, hang on. Do you see me perfectly? I'm sorry, I'm taking a break here. Can you see me good, Frank? Is there anything in the way? Something popped up on my screen. I want to make sure.
No, I can see it just fine. There's nothing in the way.
Okay, something popped up. Oh, here it is. Okay, there it is. I just want to make sure it wasn't going to mess up the recording. So, yeah, yes, that is from Mere Christianity. And if I'm not mistaken, that was almost the first exploration of the transcendental argument. The first guy that really stated we can prove that there is an immaterial world that we utilize every time we think.
Right.
We are dealing with thoughts that cannot be accounted for. And they will say, well, you know, the synapses in your brain and there's electronics. And it's like, no. You're describing a hard drive. I understand that a hard drive can copy information, send information, that it can transfer it from one spot to another and store it. I get that. That is what my brain does. But what the brain doesn't do, what the hard drive doesn't do, you never see your computer contemplating itself. It never decides to wake up one morning and start talking about things. It has to have an outer mind to input, to put in, here's what I want you to look for. And that says, okay, I can find that. Thanks for telling me what to go seek. So there's always this idea there has to be something outside of the machine, which I believe as a Christian is your soul. There's that spiritual dimension that interacts with the material dimension. And when people grasp that, instead of being fearful of it or seeing it as superstitious, it should be awe-inspiring.
Yeah, that's right.
You're an eternal, existent being, and we can prove it every time a atheist thinks and uses ideas. He's proving God's existence because God is the only non-contingent mind. Thus, he gives us access to how to think about what we're searching for. Thus, every time you think, you are accessing the mind of God. And it should bring you to your knees. Instead, it brings them to their anger, their fist shaking. And you answered my question, but I guess I'm just trying to find if there's another way around this, because I say, how do they grapple with these things? They're undeniable.
They don't.
We're dealing with logic and reason. But if you keep telling them, I'm sure you've debated some of these guys more than once. They know what you're going to say, and you know what they're going to say, and it just kind of sticks there.
Yeah, actually, they don't. Most of them don't even read they don't read my books. I mean, Jeffrey Lauder did, Hitchens didn't, Michael Shermer hasn't, and they just avoid the question, Brad. They don't delve into it. Which is really annoying because these are issues we ought to be discussing. But since they know there's no answer from a materialistic perspective, then they just try and kick up a lot of dust and avoid the topic completely. And here's an analogy I've given that may be helpful. You know, today that some atheists say, I just lack a belief in God. You've probably heard people say that, right?
Right. We're all atheists. We're all atheists, right?
Yeah. I just lack a belief in God. You know, you have the burden of proof to tell me why God does exist. And I say, no, we both have an equal burden to explain why reality is the way it is. I have a burden. If I'm going to say God exists, I have a burden to say, here's why I think God best explains these realities: the creation of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe, objective moral values, evil. Christianity explains evil. Christianity is the answer to evil. Reason, our ability to think, reports of a resurrection that appear to be true, you know, miracles. Where do these things come from? Answered prayer, near-death experiences that you can verify. What best explains all these things? I have the burden, and so does an atheist. If the atheist is going to be someone that's going to put forth a comprehensive worldview. And the analogy I give is this. Let's suppose, Brad, we're both detectives and we come across a murdered body. We know it's been murdered, right? There's knife wounds in it, right? It's definitely a murder. And you go, hey, I'm looking at all the clues and I think suspect X is the murderer. And I look at you and I go, Brad, I lack a belief suspect X is the murderer. And here's why. I don't think suspect X is the true suspect. Okay, that's fair, right? But then you look at me and you go, well, who do you think the true suspect is? And I go, oh, I just lack a belief your guy's the real guy. Am I a good detective if I stop right there? No, I have now an obligation to try and hunt down and find the real suspect. Yeah. I just can't say, Brad, your guy's wrong, and I don't have any explanation for why this guy's murdered. I mean, I can do that, but I wouldn't be a good detective.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that human beings, if we're trying to explain reality, no matter who we are, we have the burden of proof to explain why all these things are the way they are. Yeah. And that's what a theist does, a Christian does. An atheist who says, I just lack a belief, really isn't saying anything about the real world. You know what they're saying? They're telling you something about their psychological state. Well, who cares what your psychological state is? Yeah. You're not saying anything about the real world. Yes. In fact, a way to cut right through the chase on all this when they say a lack of belief is just ask them this question. Here's a proposition. God exists? I just have one question. Do you agree with that proposition? Do you disagree with that proposition? Or are you unsure? If they agree, they're a theist. They disagree, they're an atheist. Unsure, agnostic. End of story, right? There's no lack of belief. You're one of those three. Where are you? That's all you need to ask them.
Right, right. And that certainly starts the process. Well, I'm going to get off this, but I do want to ask it one last time because I think I've asked it 3 times. It's not because you're not answering it. I'm just trying to figure out if there's something I'm missing because I'm trying to be fair to the atheist's perspective from what I've observed in case I'm missing something. So I'll just sort of end this topic with Sam Harris. Now, if I'm not mistaken, he's a determinist, yes?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one more time. And again, I'm asking you to think for them, and clearly they don't think clearly, but I have to give a smart guy the benefit of the doubt because it doesn't correlate that somebody with that intelligence can simply miss the logical disconnect. But if you're a determinist, then when you say I have to get on this debate stage with you, Frank, and I have to move people away from this Christianity because it's superstitious. It's caused all the death and destruction more than anything in human history. And I'm here to help people get free and to just be reasonable and rational and live the best life they choose. And that's good enough. And that's why I'm here. And I'm doing good because I am promoting human flourishing. And that's all that matters. And that's why I'm doing this. So I'm really trying to give a public service to culture. And you say, that's funny you should say that because I feel the same way, except I believe that culture owes its allegiance to the creator of the culture, the creator of the humanity, the one who gave us these standards, and that we have to bow to them. And we have to serve him because everybody's going to serve something. So whatever your worldview is your religion. The end. I don't care if you use the word religion, it is. If that's what motivates you, makes you decide how to think, what is good, what is bad, how to vote, what is the right way to act, it's your religion. So, and atheism is the original religious cult, because I think it was the first religion when everybody believed at least in some kind of God. Here come a guy saying, well, there's no God. And that was like, nobody thought of that in the ancient times. Of course there's a God. We just don't know what he's like. So they're like the original religious cult is to be an atheist, because it's like, what are you talking about? So if he believes that he can't not reach the conclusion that he's reached, that there is no God and I have to prove it, you then, being determined, cannot not reach the idea that there must be a God, and let me introduce you to him. You have no option. So why is he mad at you? Why is he calling you maybe immoral or mean or judgmental or something? If you say, dude, I can't help it. My brain is wired this way. I have a disorder. I'm determined. So how dare you attack me and ridicule me in any way, maliciously come after my existence when I have no option? I was coded this way. Why are we even talking about it? Let me go live my crazy programming. You go live your programming and let it go. But they don't. They have a 500-page book reaching the conclusion that life has no meaning, and they find meaning in the conclusion. Explain to me how he gets around determinism as any reason to ever debate or have any intellectual discourse.
This is a totally unsatisfying answer, Brad, because I have the same question for them. They ignore it. They won't debate it. They can't. They know it's right. I mean, what's his name? Haldane, the evolutionist from 100 or so years ago. He recognized the problem. He said that if my brain is merely composed of atoms and every thought I have is the result of atoms bumping into one another, I have no reason to believe my brain is composed of atoms. Right. So why should I believe it? Now, that's the biggest question I have for them, and they never answer it. They avoid it because logically, and I mean, Sam Harris is educated at Stanford, right? Yeah. He's a Stanford PhD, I think, in philosophy or neuroscience, something like that. And yet this elementary error, this elementary self-defeating view is something he doesn't seem to recognize.
But when you are in, I don't know if you ever debated him, but
we tried, but he wanted way too much money to debate.
Okay,
I can tell you how much he wanted, but
okay. So when you, but if you've debated anyone who is a determinist, they
have to steal from God to argue.
Yeah, they just they can't. I guess it's kind of like the old neo-Darwinist trope. We don't know how things happened, or I don't care how fine-tuned the Earth is. The fact that we're here means we must have hit the jackpot, and that's the way. Since we're here, it worked.
No, they continually have to steal from God while they argue against him, right? Yeah. They say we're just molecular machines, but they're the champions of reason. How could you be the champions of reason if you're a molecular machine, if you're a moist robot, right?
Yeah.
They call themselves the Brights. They call themselves, think how ironic this is, Brad. They used to call themselves, I don't know if they still do, but they used to call themselves the free thinkers.
Yeah.
Well, here's the interesting thing. There is no free and there is no thinking going on if we're just molecular machines, right?
Right.
And it was Daniel Dennett who said, he's one of those four horsemen of the atheist, the new atheists. He said consciousness is an illusion. Well, one wonders if he was conscious when he said that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. The incongruity to the way these guys communicate.
Yeah,
it's mind-boggling because they're too smart for this, and yet it is what it is. I just thought
a spiritual blindness going on.
Well, there's no other way to even evaluate it because it doesn't make sense.
No.
I mean, unless determinism is atheistic Calvinism, they have no option. But I anyways, okay. I just thought, if you'd
I'm
ever
as
heard.
frustrated as you are on this.
I just wondered if you had ever come across somebody that at least tried to grapple with it.
No, there is no way. And any attempt to prove materialism must presuppose materialism's faults. Why? Because if I try and go, you know how they try and do neuroscience, we can look at your brain and we can see what stuff lights up when, and so all these thoughts are determined. Well, who did the experiment?
Yeah.
And did they have free will to follow the evidence where it leads?
Yeah.
Or are they a moist robot too?
Yes. Right. Well, of course. Yeah.
There's no way you can prove materialism.
No, it's a hard. It's
freedom
like
to follow the evidence where it leads.
It's a hard drive analyzing a hard drive. It's a continuous loop. There's nothing to find here because it's just stuck in material that's just been recorded and has no existential value because it can't be used with any agency because there is none. So it doesn't make sense. Anyways, like I said, I'll leave that alone. But I was hoping there would be one guy at least trying to play with it because I'd be intrigued as to how they tried.
I haven't found anyone in a debate willing to go there. I tried it with Hitchens. I tried it with Shermer. They just wouldn't go there.
Okay. Well, then let's go to the next phase of that. That I think is in kind of the same category, but isn't, and maybe it'll be the same result, and we'll just move on. But purpose. That to me is something that I've noticed atheists cannot wrap their minds around. That if nihilism, which is the ultimate result of true atheism, Nietzsche said that first, and he's smarter than any of these other guys, atheists. If nihilism is simply the result of purposeless matter, material, energy, time, accidentally making molecules too big for their britches and became self-aware. There's nothing to see here. We are simply waiting to die.
Yeah.
And that's all we got. And they will always argue, and it's kind of going back to what you said. They will always utilize Christian and theistic perspectives to justify their position without realizing it. And so they will try to say, I don't need a meta-narrative. I don't need an ultimate meaning because I'll make my own. And that's what they say every time. I just make my own meaning. And I say to them, that's not the point. I'm not saying that you don't try to find some reason to do what you're doing at the moment. Who doesn't? You can't function without that. What we're trying to tell you is if in the end we all vanish into eternal oblivion, it doesn't have any purpose.
That's right.
There's no meaning. It's kind of like if you were in an elevator and it drops and it's plummeting to the ground and a guy says, I figured out a cure for cancer. Who cares?
Right.
You're about to hit and then it ain't going to matter. And when this universe vanishes, I don't care if you come up with how to make us put our brain in a vat and we live forever. When the universe is gone, you're gone. So none of this mattered. And the only way I could frame it was, if a novel is a beginning, a middle, and then a full story, there's chapters in that novel. So when you try to make meaning out of your momentary existence, it's like a chapter. It's real. It's there. It's in there. It doesn't have context. So I don't know how it started, how it ended. But if the whole book is burned, your chapter's gone. So it has no relevance. That's what life is in your world. If we're going to eventually cease to exist and go into eternal unconsciousness, we literally are deluding ourselves into thinking that there should be some reason that we're doing anything, finding science, fixing cancer, saving children.
And that's why the Apostle Paul said, if Jesus hasn't risen from the dead, if Christianity is not true, let's eat, drink, and be merry because for tomorrow we die.
Right.
What's the point? There is no ultimate point. Even Richard Dawkins says that we just dance to our DNA.
Right.
We're just molecular machines, right? And if that's the case, there is no ultimate purpose. And if there's no ultimate purpose, then there's no right or wrong. I mean, it doesn't make any ultimate difference if you live like a saint or a sinner. If you live like Mother Teresa or Adolf Hitler, there's no ultimate difference. Because as you say, you burn the whole book up, it's just gone. It's just evaporated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your little chapter in the middle of it is irrelevant. If the whole story's gone, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
So
if nothing lasts forever, then there's no forever meaning. There's no forever purpose.
Right.
And since ultimately we do last forever, there is ultimate meaning. And here's the interesting thing about this too, Brad. C.S. Lewis famously said something like this: if you just try at aim at Earth, if you just try and make Earth better, it's not going to work out. But if you aim at heaven, you'll get Earth thrown in.
Yeah.
And the reason he said this was, if you think about it, look, if we're going to live so many years here and then die and then it's over, why should I be kind to anyone else? If I can just run over you and get sex, money, and power, the big three things I want, like Stalin did, why not do that? There's no ultimate consequence to it. Yeah. But if I know there is an afterlife, and I know that we're in a process of either becoming more like Jesus or more like Satan in this life, we're either trusting in Christ or we're not. If I know that there is something more than this life, then I will maybe sacrifice my baser desires to help you and to help others, because I know there's a kingdom coming and I need to contribute to that kingdom.
Yeah.
And that makes Earth better, and you get heaven thrown in. But if you just try for Earth, nothing works out.
Well, and like you said, I mean, if you look at the Bible and how it tells us why we're here and where we're going, then it does motivate us. There's some reason to do what we do. And they do it too. They're motivated to do these things. They just don't acknowledge why, because they think that it's something they've decided to do on their own. There's some disconnect. Obviously, as believers, we think there's a demonic element, there's a spiritual darkness, there's a even at some points, God says, "I've given you over. You can't come back.
That's right.
You're gone."
But why? It's the why is because they refused to follow the truth. In fact, Paul says that. Where does he say that? First or Second Timothy, where he talks about, maybe it's Second Thessalonians. Now I'm thinking about, where he says that these satanic signs deceived people because they refused to follow the truth. It wasn't like God blinded them arbitrarily. Well, I don't want you in the kingdom, so I'm going to blind you. No, these are the people that had the truth, suppressed it, went their own way, and then God said, "Fine, you want? I'll give you up to your own desire. Go."
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's really, the truth is that Christianity is difficult. It isn't easy. Nope. It does not. I guess it gives us answers to pretty much every dilemma, but they're not always satisfying.
Oh yeah.
Pain is real. You're raping and butchering children. I don't know, brother. I'm thinking, God, I don't know. Step in, man. Come on. So, sovereignty of God, the idea that that baby died, and we think, what a evil God you must be if you exist to do such a thing. And what if God's saying, oh yeah, but he was going to grow up and become a murderer and kill 25 people, plus he was going to hell, so I just saved him from eternity in hell. We don't know what. Yeah. I can't even imagine finessing a world where everybody has their own choices and their own ways of doing things.
It's called the ripple effect. We don't, things are going to ripple forward, and we don't know how it's going to ultimately turn out, but God does.
Yeah.
Tragically, the big awful thing you had happen in Nashville last month.
Yeah.
Where you had 9-year-olds gunned down.
Yeah.
You know what? If you're an atheist, you have to say there's nothing really wrong with that.
There isn't anything wrong. Well, and honestly, in America now, and in the West, that's getting more and more okay to say. If it's a Christian, perhaps you deserved it. And that's where we sit. Well, you know what? I don't want to just sort of just focus on these sort of typical apologetic concepts, because I would rather people go see your material online where you really break things down at a deeper level. But I wanted to have more of a dialogue with you like this. A couple guys almost thought experimenting, trying to figure these things out, so maybe it would be a fresher way for people to observe this concept. But please go see Cross-Examine or any of Frank's materials if you want to get, I'm sure you could even put in a topic if you want a deeper analysis on things.
Oh, yeah. And our YouTube channel has like 1,600 videos on it. Many of them are Q&A videos from the college campus.
Yeah.
So you can get, so many questions have been addressed in those videos, and you can see the whole presentation. Every college we go to, you can find the presentation for it on YouTube. And of course, our website, crossexamine.org, we have a podcast, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It's twice a week. In fact, I just did a podcast called The 5 M's that everyone needs to explain. You need to explain why the material world exists, the mental world exists, the mathematical world, the moral world, and the metaphysical world. And let me add a sixth one, meaning. Why is there meaning? You just brought that up. right? Those 6 things, every worldview at a minimum needs to explain. If your worldview can't explain all 6 of those things, then it's an inadequate worldview.
Well, and I think also that what you and I have just are kind of talking about, that we can be a little bit more clear about, is that atheists, agnostics, other religious beliefs, whatnot, cults, they all live their lives regularly seeking those things.
Mm-hmm.
You do. I want to have meaning. There's a reason I fell in love. There's a reason I want to take care of my kid. I want to do a nice thing. I want to be kind. Whatever the thing is, why am I here? And we search for those things without trying. It just is innate in us because God is real.
That's right.
And so when the I don't know how these atheists come up with this idea that one day I'll stand before God if he happened to exist, and I'll shake my fist and say, how dare you didn't give me enough evidence. It's like, dude, every dang second he's given you proof of him. You've chosen to observe the evidence and reinterpret it in a meaning that you've already just predetermined is true. So the proof of it, and you even said it when we first started about I'm unrighteous. That's what I love about Christianity. It's why I know it's true and none of the others are. It's self-correcting. Every time something evil is done in Jesus' name, I can go to that same Bible and say, let me show you in my Bible how they didn't do this the way Jesus commanded.
That's right.
Not all religions have. There are some religious books that say, go kill your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Go wipe out that person. You have no obligation. That Buddhism, I don't even make sense. It's just going to nothingness. It's absurdity. It's absurdity. Trying to almost numb yourself from the fact that you're here and you don't know why. But I'm curious about your experience because you've been doing this so long. So how many years have you been on college campuses?
We started in earnest in 2007. So what is that? We have 16
so like 15?
years. 16 years, yeah. We've been doing it.
So in 16, so I'm, as you know, you're one of the first ministries that was kind of savvy enough to realize what I was doing all along, that I had a lot more than comedy that I was trying to surreptitiously move into the marketplace. And you were always kind of savvy to that. You just saw that, okay, I see what you're up to. And I'm grateful, because I people that I admire and that I respect can help inspire you and help you feel like you're on the right track. Because sometimes when you're doing something odd like this, unorthodox, you can feel kind of alone and almost questioning, like, is this right? Is this?
Brad, there was a playwright. I can't remember the guy's name, but he said this. He said, "Get them laughing, and when their mouths are open, pour truth in there."
Nice.
Right? You notice how laughter, and I try and use a little bit of comedy in my routine about. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, particularly the disciples. They run away. They're cowards. All that stuff is funny if you think about it.
Yeah.
And no history. No people would invent such embarrassing details about themselves. We see that completely opposite in other histories. In fact, in our current culture, the Biden administration never admits they do anything wrong, right? Everything is hunky-dory. We're all good. We're great. We never have done anything. Nothing's ever embarrassing. And it's true of every administration, right? They put their press secretary out there and they spin stuff. The Bible is the ultimate no spin zone. Yeah. You get so much. I mean, the Old Testament in particular, these people are Olympic quality sinners. I mean, they get the gold medal in sin everywhere they go, right? And they keep doing the same stupid things over and over again, and God has to hammer them. They're not making this up. It's not an invented story. You don't invent your history that you were a bunch of bumbling cowards and idiots and just immoral people, but that's what the Bible says the Jews were.
Yeah. Well, and I remember reading the Old Testament one time. I went through I wanted to do a Bible in a year thing, and I knew going in, it's like, oh man, I'm going to get into Leviticus and Numbers. Oh, God, it's going to be rough.
The book of Levititis.
Yeah, and I remember reading like, and Jehoshaphat begot Jebediah and Zipper, and I remember kind of wanting to just blast through it, and I thought to myself, Brad, this is the Bible. You believe this is God's word. So he put these names in here. So read them. Give them the respect and read their names.
Yeah.
And I realized from that little sense of dignity, what God was saying was, this isn't a myth. This isn't Thor. This isn't Zeus. These are
all
real
those
guys.
details are
Here's their
amazing.
names.
Yeah.
Here's their lineage. This is history. I want you to understand this really happened, and I was in the midst of it. So that was an interesting perspective. But the other thing that really spoke to me was watching Israel have these ridiculous miracles take place, get them out of the most horrific circumstances. 2 weeks later, they're worshiping a calf.
Exactly.
And you're going, what in, I can't wrap my mind around that. And it was easy to say Israelites are fools. What is it with these folks? And then, and what God was telling me, Frank, when I began to really sort of break this down, is he said, you don't understand. Israel is you.
Mm-hmm.
You would have done the same thing. How many times in your life did I do something miraculous? And 2 days later, something's going on. You're going, what am I going to do? Didn't I just do something for you 2 days ago?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're scared, like you're going to worship fear?
Yeah,
and I realized God has just gave us a blueprint, found a group of people, made sure their genealogy was recorded to prove this is real, made it very precise, very technically, boringly, anally precise to let you know this is real. These were real people that I've set aside to tell you the human condition in this little petri dish known as Israel. Well, now we're in America. And America, in the last few years, the wheels have come frickin' off.
Oh yeah,
and we are sitting here in this this downfall, Frank, that I couldn't have imagined. I couldn't have imagined it. I couldn't have imagined that we would be weaponizing a government institutions like the IRS or the FBI by a group of folks. I didn't realize that we would instantly disregard our First Amendment rights, and people would give their liberties away without question, and had no sense of gratefulness for those who passed away to give you this freedom, and to give it away without a fight. And it breaks my heart. And then I have to stop back and go, I do not worship the United States. I worship Jesus, but I'm grateful for this nation. And this was the territory I was given. I'm obligated to defend it.
That's right.
Because this is where I am. If I was in North Korea, we'd be having a different conversation, and it wouldn't be on television. We'd be in a closet whispering, because we would have to navigate a whole different thing. But here, I still have a First Amendment. I still have freedom. And we're watching that seep away. And this isn't political. This is cultural. Our culture, to be redeemed, is the purpose of Christianity. Fixing the inculcation of sin in a culture and trying to return it to Eden. We're never going to get there, but you're supposed to try. You're supposed to shoot for it.
That's right.
And shoot for the heavens, and the earth is thrown in. So let me ask you this first, because I believe the real downfall of America that has taken place and where we are right now was exactly because they took over academia and took over the institutions. They're training our kids to hate the country that they've been given from the Frankfurt School. This is all cultural Marxism. We know where this came from. But it's working, and they're winning by far at this point. So just in 16 years of your ministry, what have you noticed about the difference in the DNA, the vibe of the students, in maybe the questions they ask, or even in their countenance, from what mattered to them and how they perceived the world 16 years ago and today?
I think more often than not, we get questions on morality. They're all related to morality, right? Whether it's the LGBTQ issues or why did God kill the Canaanites. And part of that is the fact that we now can get all these memes, and kids have access to all these different people out there who are trying to disparage Christianity. They're using a standard to disparage Christianity, a standard they don't have in their atheistic worldview, but they're trying to say Christianity's wrong because God killed the Canaanites, or Christianity's wrong because two men he doesn't want them to be together and have sex or whatever, or Christianity's wrong because it's the only way, or that kind of thing. They're assuming standards when they say that, Brad, but more of the questions now than they were, say, 15 years ago are related to that. That's where people live. Look, they can't dispute the Big Bang, the fact that the universe had a beginning. They can't dispute the fine tuning of the universe. But they'll dig their heels in on morality because they think what they're doing is right. And I always ask them, by what standard are you judging this to be right? Where are you getting this standard from? If there is no God, there are no rights. There's not only no right to same-sex marriage, there's no right to natural marriage. If there is no God, there's no right to abortion. There's not even a right to life if there's no God.
Yeah.
There's no rights anywhere. Where do rights come from?
Right.
And so here they are. Brad, they're stealing from God.
I knew it was in that book. I was sure that God was prompting me to say it's in his book. Well, I think it's fascinating. And of course, it's original sin. I mean, if we really look at everything that's happening on earth and has never changed, it goes to the original sin, the only sin God said he hated more than anything, pride, because pride is basically a worship of yourself.
That's right. I want to be God.
And that's all it is. And
Brad,
so if somebody says, well, how dare you? Go ahead.
Let me just mention one question that I think might be helpful to your listeners and viewers that I think you should ask people, because I ask this question of people on college campuses all the time. If they're an atheist or a non-believer, they get up to the microphone, they express any hostility. I normally stop and just ask them this. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? I've had atheists stand at that microphone and say, no. And I ask them, no? How's that reasonable? How's that rational? I thought you said you were a beacon of rationality. How is it rational that you wouldn't believe something if it were true? Well, it's not rational. It's not a head problem. It's a heart problem. They don't want it to be true.
Yes.
They don't want there to be a God because they want to be God of their own lives. They're not on a truth quest. They're on a happiness quest. And they're just going to believe whatever they think is going to make them happy. And as you know, when you're young, you can make yourself happy over the short term doing a lot of fun, selfish, sinful things. But over the long term, it's a disaster. And everyone right now who's listening or watching us, who's over 40 years old, know what we're talking about. Because if you try and live completely for yourself, just on your base emotions, your base instincts, it's not going to work out long term. You're going to wind up addicted, alone, broke, and probably prematurely dead. You can't follow your heart. You need to guard your heart. That's what the scriptures say. Guard your heart because everything you do flows from it. So I always ask them, if it really were true, would you become a Christian? And it's going to save you a lot of time, people. Someone makes an objection, you begin to answer it, and they're moving the goalpost. They're on to something else, right? Don't play the game. Just say, hey, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? Or if Jesus rose from the dead, would you follow him? If they hesitate or say no, kick the dust off your sandals and move on to somebody else.
That's what I was going to ask. I think that Christians sometimes don't give themselves permission to realize you're not obligated to engage in people who are not interested. I mean, you're wasting your time. You're throwing pearls before swine.
Exactly, and they'll trample you to death.
So there's no interest in that. So you would say then, from your experience, the number one objection to Christianity, if you were to distill it down, would be moral. That it holds you to standards that perhaps you don't want to deal with?
Oh, yeah, it's all moral. Yeah. I mean, think about so-called progressive Christianity, which isn't Christian at all because they're disagreeing with Jesus, and you're not progressing if you're disagreeing with Jesus. But anyway, what do these people deny? They deny the inerrancy of the Bible. They think in every deconstruction I've seen, and maybe you've seen them too, Brad, they always get back to, well, it's the LGBTQ issue. I think the Bible's, their sexual ethic of the Bible's wrong. What standard are you claiming it's wrong for? Where are you getting this from, right?
Right.
The atonement is divine child abuse. Now, Jesus volunteered to go to the cross. Yeah. God didn't force him there. The Father didn't force him there, right? Yeah. Oh, it's wrong to say you're the only way. And here they are claiming their way is the only way, that there isn't only one way. That's the only way, right? I mean, these are all moral issues. God killed the Canaanites in the Old Testament. Well, maybe because they deserved it. How about that? Maybe it was called judgment.
Right.
Do you know, Brad, that the Muslims get something right that many Christians don't? That God is a judge. Muslims have that right. God is a judge. Now, they don't have a standard for judgment. Allah is arbitrary, but they get the concept.
Yeah.
That God is a judge. And it's interesting that the Bible actually disagrees with some aspect of every culture. For example, here, we think love your enemies is a good thing. Oh, that's so sweet. That's so kind, right? But we think, oh, the sexual ethics, the Bible's wrong. You go over to the Middle East, it's reversed. Love your enemies. What are you, crazy? You can't do that. You got to put your enemies down. Oh, sexual ethics? The Bible's right about that. Look, if the Bible or if your God agrees with you on everything, you got the wrong God. Right?
For sure. Well, I've always said, if you come up with some concept or idea that only you have, be sure you realize you're in a cult, because God will always justify it with other people confirming that he will never give it to one guy, except maybe Christ. Well, so let's, as we get in, we're at about an hour, so if you got a few more minutes, I'll do that.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
But good. Appreciate that. So I want to go out a little bit not off topic, but off of what is typically your topic, I think. Which is usually dealing with theology and apologetics within the basic questions that I'm sure you've heard the same. I mean, if you distill them down to 10 questions, you've heard the most of it. You hear it every dang time. So I don't want to revisit that, because we can go see that online and we can see that all. I want to get to places that are a little bit more culturally specific and see if you have some thoughts on that and some insights on that. Yeah. So let's start with something that I did. I did a series, and I still have some more to interview, but I wanted to interview pastors. I called it my Warrior Pastor Series. And it essentially was, I found nowadays, especially when I wanted to go into a church, and I want them to understand, listen, I am unapologetic as a believer, as a conservative, I love this, this nation. I'm grateful for it. I don't worship it. It's not but I'm grateful, and I believe I should defend it because it gives me religious liberties, blah, blah, blah. I don't have to go into all that, Frank. All I have to ask a church is one question. I know who they are. What did you do for COVID? Tells me everything. And virtually all the guys that bring me in, pastors and whatnot, well, we shut down for a little bit, and I said, who didn't? Of course. We didn't know what was going on. They said, give me 2 weeks to get the lay. Of course. Yeah, man. It's some crazy virus. We got the Black Plague coming back. We better be careful. And then we started realizing what was really going on. And those pastors said, I'm opening wide open. You don't have to come, but I will not shut this door. There's a reason it's called sanctuary, and it's going to remain that way. So that gave me a sense of the warriors, those who would want to defend the risk that comes with freedom and free agency.
That's right.
Not to be foolish, but there is risk if you want something good. If you want the government to control you and have a constant babysitter, you won't have to worry about risk. They'll just tell you what to do, and that'll be that. I can't live that way. So we ended up in some really deep clashes within the church during the COVID of those who either opened or shut, thinking, always bringing Jesus. Jesus would have shut her down, because we got to be good citizens, and Romans teaches us about the hierarchy of the creation, and we got to obey the government and blah blah blah.
Except when they tell you.
So you tell me
God.
what in your knowledge and deep understanding of the Bible, in this specific instance, what did these guys that literally allowed a secular government to tell them they were unessential? Somebody would have told me that as a church, I would have not. I want to just open the doors. I would have ripped them off the hinges. How dare you? That's where my righteous indignation comes in.
Especially when they said that abortion clinics, liquor stores, and casinos could remain. Oh, and the strip clubs too. They happen to be essential, but the church isn't. Look, I agree with you. In the beginning, nobody knew what it was. Is this Ebola? All right, let's shut down. Let's figure it out, right? But two events occurred that everybody showed it was political. When the George Floyd thing happened, and the CDC and other scientists came out saying, maintain social distancing unless you're protesting. If you're protesting, it's okay. You can get as close as you want, right? And then when people are pouring across the border, and Biden and all of his other cronies are saying, oh, everyone needs to get vaccinated, except the people coming across the border. You don't need to get vaccinated. You know it's political. Yeah. And if you can't see that's political, you're blind.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. They lost all credibility, did the CDC. They've lost it completely. And to regain it now, I don't know how they're going to do it. You need a completely new administration. You need to clean the house and start over.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And but we also saw millions and millions of Americans who don't give a crap and are happy to. I mean, we now know, and this is a crude way of putting it, we now know who the fellow citizens are who will make the phone call. I know where they're hiding the Jews, because they're basically, that's what they did.
Right.
Put your mask on, get your vaccine. You don't get to work. You don't get to. I mean, it's like, holy, do you see what you're doing?
Yeah.
And so this is some evil stuff. And I've even come to a conclusion that we now have to differentiate between a citizen of the United States and an American. All Americans are citizens, but not all citizens are Americans anymore. Because to be an American, you have to appreciate your nation, love it, give it sovereignty, protect it, care about its laws, be a good citizen, try to reduce the federal government so that you have the freedom and the liberties, the original intent of the Constitution. This was what it meant to be American. That's why we aren't multicultural. That's a fake word utilized to act like all cultures are equal. Clearly they're not. You know if your country's great or not. Do people want in or do they want out? And nobody's digging holes, sneaking into North Korea, I guarantee you. So what we're looking at is a nation where people are parasitically, all the left does is parasite, because they have nothing they can compel people to be intrigued by, because it's all cancer. But they're parasites. They find a healthy host, they suck every good value out of it, leave the shell and act like something good remains. So I wonder if you can sort of quickly, sort of in a synopsis, say, okay, so when this happens again, and whatever new form this is going to, whether it's a virus or monetary collapse, who knows what they're going to shove at us next time to try to control the world. What is the Christian position between honoring the state, because sometimes the state has a bad Caesar, an evil guy, and when does one say, I can't do that one. That one I cannot.
Well, there's two conditions. If you obey the state, unless they order you to do something that the Bible says you can't do, or they try and compel you to do something. Well, no, they compel you to do something that says the Bible says you can't do, or they say you can't do something the Bible tells you ought to do, like meet. Let us not give up meeting together. And that's what they tried to do with COVID. As we already said, first few weeks, we get it. After that, hold on. This is political. You're not going to shut us down and keep the liquor stores, the abortion clinics, the casinos and the strip clubs open. What Walmart is essential, but mom and pop down the street isn't?
Right.
Where does that come from?
Right. Well, one of the things that I said to people is like, look, I'm not some expert. I don't know everything, but I got a brain and I have a spiritual dimension to me that I think helps illuminate some of these ideas. But I said, if somebody was to ask me, define your faith in one word, what would you say? And if I ask people that, they usually say Jesus, and that's a good answer. I wouldn't say Jesus. I'd say truth. Because the one thing that Christianity demands is, this is the truth. And by the way, when I say truth, I'm referencing Jesus.
Yeah, that's right.
Said,
sure.
I am the way, the truth. He is the immutable truth. All truth derives from him. So that's a given. But anything that compromises the truth, I believe, is evil and needs to be abandoned, because all we're fighting on this earth is not communism and capitalism or left and right or Democrats and Republicans. That's just sort of the outer manifestation of the only fight that has ever existed on earth, truth and lies. That's all we're fighting. Yeah. And so I was curious, if you felt that there was anything missing during that time, or if anybody had a point to saying, loving thing would be to, because I always say, define your terms, by the way. Well, Jesus is love. I agree. What's love?
Yeah, what does
Please
it mean?
Describe that. So I understand we're talking about not the same word, the same meaning. That's all. It
doesn't mean approval. That's enablement. You're proving people who are doing evil, that's not love. They're enabling them to do it.
Right.
But yeah, if you look at the apostles, they said we must obey God rather than men. If the government's telling you to disobey God, and you don't obey them. Now, you might have to take the consequences of that, right? You may get thrown into jail because of it, as Jesus said. You may be persecuted, as Paul said, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do what's right and leave the results to God.
Right.
That's what we need to do, Brad. Do what's right, leave the results to God. It's easier said than done, but that's what we need to do.
Well, and we have a tendency to like to read about the history of our nation and the courage of those folks. But the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, it wasn't a myth. Those are real people going,
oh, yeah,
I guess here we go. And I believe we're at that place. And it brings up this question. And it always, people get nervous. But I feel like it has to be addressed from a Christian perspective. The Second Amendment of the United States was put in place for one reason. If your government ever becomes totalitarian, you will at least have a chance to defend yourself, because every totalitarian regime in human history started by disarming their citizens, every one of them. So they can't fight back. Okay. Now you got a Christianity that is not an offensive religion. We are allowed to defend ourselves against injustice, to protect ourselves. Islam can go kill its enemies. We're not allowed that. We are very unique and almost counterintuitive to our natural man of wanting to go kill everybody that gets in our way. We have to discipline ourselves where we get our term disciple. But we also have a long history of Augustinian just war theory.
Yes.
Because Christians had to grapple with wars happen all the time, and you're part of this community. What are you going to do? And so just give me your take, however God would tell you. When does it become okay? I'm going to add this little addendum. When I watch my poor brothers and sisters in Uganda, Nigeria, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Myanmar, India, where they're being killed in the streets or burned alive or whatever, I always think to myself, why don't you defend yourself? Now, is it because they are unarmed, or do they have some perspective that this is what martyrdom is that I don't even allow myself to defend myself? So I've kind of mixed two pieces of this element together, but what is your take on when and if and how Christians are allowed to take up arms to defend themselves?
Well, I think Jesus told his disciples, if you don't have a sword, go get one. That's in Luke 22 or 23, I believe. And I don't think it was to have cheese and crackers, right? They were carrying money at that point. So self-defense is always a valid reason for using force. And there are the valid reasons for using force. You mentioned one already: just war. You're in a just war theory, self-defense, or capital punishment by a just government. Like a government can decide through proper means, if somebody's guilty and deserves the death penalty, then they can be punished that way. And as Francis Schaeffer said years ago, that in any fallen world, some level of force is going to be necessary. Now, here's the problem. If the government is using force on you, do you have the ability to defend yourself? And I actually think you do. The question is it something that's going to turn out well for you?
Right.
And it probably isn't. So it might not be that you can organize and defend yourself against a despotic government. My co-author, Dr. Norman Geisler, would say, reading the scriptures, he thinks the only way the American Revolution would have been legitimate is if they joined another government and fought against the British colony here, because that would be one government fighting against another government. Now, others would say, well, they weren't really trying to overthrow the Brits. They were just trying to kick them out of this area. It was a war for independence. It wasn't a revolution saying, we're going to take out King George and we're going to install our own guy up there. No, just in this area, we wanted our own government because they were governing immorally. Now, Christians have disagreed over this, but I think we do have the right. The question is it going to end right for you if you try that? If you try and take up arms against.
Well, and by the way, that is one of the elements that you're supposed to analyze in just war is it feasible to even win?
Right.
If it's not, it probably isn't a war you should get involved. If you don't have a potential to win,
Yeah, sure, exactly.
Then it's probably something, but that might be more pragmatic than
Right.
spiritual.
But civil disobedience. Look, if we're in China right now, and your wife is pregnant with the second child, they're going to come after that child and try and abort that child. Now, am I going to try and overthrow the Chinese government with force? I'm not going to be able to do that, but I will flee. I will disobey and try and bring that child into this world in a natural way. I'm not going to abort the child. I don't care what the government says.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true happening now. Last year, the Biden administration, as you may know, Brad, decided that if the gender affirming care, right, this idea that if your kid is confused about his or her gender and wants a sex change, you either have to give them cross-sex hormones or surgery. And if you don't, and this was in an HHS memo from the Biden administration, March 31st, 2022. If you don't, the government may consider taking that child away from you.
Yeah.
Now, that's going to come to blows at some point.
Yeah.
The government tries to come in and take your child from you to mutilate him or her. I can see some parents saying, not in my house, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be some shots fired over that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. And
what are you going to do?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Well, there we, and that's where we sit.
I'm not advocating. I'm not, want, that to happen.
I know.
I'm just saying, if you are physically going to harm my child, what am I supposed to do?
Right. Of course. Well, and what's interesting is those who want to disarm us and gun laws and basically take away our arms. And when they reference the Second Amendment, say, well, it was only for a militia. This is personal arms, blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't. It was for, that was part of it, but it was also for personal protection as well. But I think that what is interesting is that the militia was for a despotic, like you said, totalitarian government, which means, what is fascism, right? Well, it's when the government owns the means of communication through the channels of disseminating information through, well, guess what? They kind of work for the Democrats. When the police force, the police force of this nation, the FBI, is now compromised. The IRS, so we can take your money, is compromised and basically under the control of a particular party. This isn't rhetoric or hyperbole. It's we now know it's true through the Twitter tweets. We now know the CIA participated in assassinating Kennedy, and nobody cares. It's like that didn't even become a news story. CIA is compromised. We have clearly compromised senators and congressmen. There's, I would say, by far the majority are corrupt and compromised and probably controlled by some foreign entity that they paid or has some pictures of them having sex with children. Who knows what has caused them to do the things they've done. But my point is this, Frank. By technically, the Second Amendment was created for a time that we're actually in, where the government controls everything, is going to steal your freedom. Now, nobody wants to go to civil war. Nobody wants to shoot their neighbors or whatnot, even though it happened in the Civil War. But we got to talk about it because something's got to give. Something's got to give.
It doesn't come to that, but what's going to happen at some point is some state somewhere is going to say, I've had enough of this. We're out, right? Maybe it's Texas or somebody like that. The problem is, what happens then, Brad? What happens to people on Social Security? What currency does Texas have, right?
Yeah.
They're going to arm themselves. I mean, there's so many dominoes that fall when that happens.
Yes.
I mean, it's called the United States, right? What happens when we're no longer united? This is going to be real messy, and we pray it doesn't come to that, but it might. By the way, I know that people are well-meaning on the other side of the debate when they talk about gun control. At least they say they're well-meaning. They think they're well-meaning. But think about this. America has always had guns. That's not a new variable. Why do we see more school shootings now? It's not because we have more guns. We've always had guns. There's got to be something else going on. And there are many other factors, including the breakdown of the family, including the fact there aren't fathers in the home.
For sure.
right? Including the fact that we've basically told God to leave us. We're not believing anymore. We're secularized. I mean, there's so many other reasons. And they think that a gun is going to jump out of a box into somebody's hands and start shooting. No, that's not the problem. The real problem there's so many other moral and spiritual factors going on.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I got to tell you, even as a Christian, I had to almost remind myself, because I have been a patriot my whole life, and so I do, appreciate this nation and what it's done, and
Sure.
I think I've kind of relied on the Constitution, the Declaration, the DNA of the American public to care about liberty and freedom, and as they used to, and they don't. And so I realized, you're kind of worshiping the wrong thing. That's not your answer, even though that's technically gives you access to a moral law that you agreed to as a nation, which, by the way, was given to us by God, saith the founders. So God bless them, at least at realizing we got to get something bigger than humans. But I wonder to myself, if we're going to be able to move forward in a way that I don't think anything is ever going to be what it used to be. I think we're at a different time in history, and
maybe right. All we can do is get involved and pray.
Yes. Well, that's it. That's what kind of where I wanted to go with it, Frank, was the truth is for sure the only shot, let alone what we should have been doing in the first place, is a change of hearts. If there's not a third great awakening, where people finally realize we've got to find some common ground, and it's going to have to be in a neutral source, a transcendent source, then I don't know how the conflict will ever be overcome. Well, let me get close to just a couple more questions, buddy, and I'll let you go. But I just wanted to end because you always got great information, and I want my people to get to know you as well and be able to observe and participate in your ministry. But I guess I'll ask you three more. I got three more, and then I'll leave you alone. First one is a little darker. The next one is a little bit more pragmatic, and the third one is a mental.
Let's do rapid fire because I got to go. I got another one.
Okay,
coming up soon.
What's the most disappointing thing you see about Christians in America? What most disappoints you?
I would probably say their lack of intellectual interest in the truth of Christianity. Everything's feeling, everything's just, it works for me rather than is it true? So I go back to what you said earlier, that truth is so important. The truth will set you free.
Yeah.
And that, of course, implies if you don't have the truth, you're in bondage.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we're in bondage to our sin. We're in bondage to what we want to do rather than what we should do.
Well, that's a perfect answer because it actually leads to the second question.
Right.
Because one of the things that I've been most disappointed is, the Bible says, study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So the Bible says, if you don't study, it's not like whatever, it's like shame on you. You should be ashamed. So I would quickly then say, for those who are Christians and said, what, he's right, I got to finally buckle down and start understanding my faith. How would you launch somebody who's first beginning in apologetics? Certainly you can bring up your own book. That's not a thing. But how would you, in a simple way, say, how do I get started in this game of learning my faith in a deeper level?
Well, what we try and do in the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, is to argue from the ground up. For people that don't even believe in truth, they think, oh, you got your truth, I got my truth, all that self-defeating nonsense. We point out that truth does exist. It's self-defeating to say it doesn't. Then we talk about the evidence for God, the evidence for miracles, the evidence for Jesus and the resurrection, and the evidence that the Bible's true. So we go from somebody who doesn't believe in truth anymore. If they're open, we try and take them logically all the way to the fact that the Bible's the Word of God. So they may want to check out I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. The book, it's also audio, and we have videos. And some of the videos you can see online on our YouTube channel. Any I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist presentation at a college campus. It's an abbreviated, obviously, presentation. It doesn't go through all the details, but they can start there. That's what I would do. Check that out. I don't have enough faith to be an
I don't
atheist.
have enough faith to be an atheist.
Right.
And then what? And what was the other one?
Well, that book, there's video on it.
Oh,
There's,
okay.
You can watch video. You can buy a complete curriculum on it that we have. Just go to crossexamine.org, click on store. You'll see it there. There's online courses you can take. I teach an online course. There's many other online courses that'll help people.
And of course, churches can bring you in, I guess,
of course,
or organizations. They just contact Cross-Examine.
In fact, let me say that in Nashville, our friends over at TPUSA, Charlie Kirk's group, TPUSA Faith is putting on a pastors conference. It's May 24th and 25th, I think. Or maybe it starts on the 23rd. 24th, 25th, 26th, I think. It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's there in Nashville. If they just type in TPUSA Pastors Summit, they'll see it.
Yes.
So
I mean, they're doing great stuff too. I always had thought
I'll be there at it. There'll be others there too, many others there.
Well, nice. Well, I always loved what he was doing, and actually thought that maybe I wondered if there was ever an interest they might have in what I do in adding that to the mix, but they've never been interested in that. But I do like what they're doing, and I appreciate what they're doing. Well, God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on and giving me some time, and I love what you're doing. Maybe we can do it again sometime and just keep fighting the good fight. We are in the battle of our lives, but brother, in the end, we're just passing through, and we always end up exactly where we belong. Folks, this is God's Comic Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues. As you know, if they say you're being politically incorrect, you get to say thank you for the compliment, because PC-free is liberty. And as I always do, I just let you know, why am I here and what's my ministry about? I'm just putting the woke back to sleep. God bless you, folks. See you next Monday.